Chapter 2368. For hours later, it was deep into the night. Giant Holy City was silent. Only a few palaces and courtyards were still lit. Ever since the Heaven Punisher took over this city, a curfew had been enforced. After dark, no people or martial artists walked outside. They all stayed at home and were not allowed to go out. Therefore, only the patrolling guards were walking around Giant Holy City. The atmosphere was dull and silent. Bai Yun, Shuang Yu, Chong Ling, and Ling Yuan were hiding under the city walls in four directions. They hid their presence and waited patiently. Waiting was the most torturous. Time seemed to slow down. Bai Yun, Shuang Yu, and the others were excited and expectant, but also worried and nervous. They hoped that the mysterious expert would appear as soon as possible, but they were also worried that the mysterious expert was too strong. It was hard to predict whether tonight would be a blessing or a disaster. Finally, it was midnight. The night was even darker, and the cold wind was still howling. Suddenly, a dazzling, icy blue brilliance lit up in the city lord's mansion. Then, a deafening explosion spread in the night sky. Bang! With that muffled explosion, an icy blue shock wave swept through the entire city lord's residence. Several majestic palaces, dozens of courtyards, and pavilions were immediately blasted into ruins. Debris and dust flew into the sky. This sudden turn of events shocked Bai Yun, Shuang Yu, and the other three. Their eyes shone brightly. The mysterious expert really came. That guy really walked into the trap. We finally caught him. Damn it. We guarded the city walls, but we did not detect that person's presence. How did he sneak into the city lord's residence? As these thoughts appeared in their minds, the four captains rushed to the city lord's residence at their fastest speed. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. 4 streams of light cut through the night sky and surrounded the ruined city lord's residence in the blink of an eye. The 4 stared sharply at the ruins. Their consciousness covered the entire giant holy city. Strong fighting spirit rose from their bodies. The ruins were full of broken walls. The ground was full of holes and gullies. There were also piles of bricks and stones. The 4 scanned with their consciousness and found hundreds of corpses buried in the ruins. Among them, there were 12 corpses of black-armored warriors, all of them broken and incomplete. It was obvious that the mysterious expert had already assassinated 12 elite warriors. And all of this was happening right beside the 4 captains, but they knew nothing about it. Thinking of this, the 4 of them felt a chill run down their spines. They had a bad feeling about this. The captain of the White Cloud Fleet held a bronze saber in his right hand and a piece of blood jade in his left hand. He quickly sent out a message. Swish! A speck of blood-red light streaked across the night sky and quickly disappeared into the horizon. He wanted to send a message to the people of Chaoshan City to gather them for help. However, just as the blood light flew into the night sky and was about to disappear, an icy blue sword light suddenly burst forth. Boom! The 30-meter-long icy blue sword light suddenly appeared in the sky and slashed at the blood jade. With a muffled sound, the blood jade sent out by Captain Bai Yun was shattered by the sword light and destroyed on the spot. His communication jade slip was actually intercepted by a mysterious powerhouse. This scene caused the 4 captains' bodies to stiffen, and their faces were filled with shock. However, by intercepting the blood jade, the mysterious expert had also exposed her position and aura. She was above the city, tens of thousands of meters above the ground in the night sky. Even though she was using a secret technique to maintain her invisible state, the 4 captains still locked onto her aura. Over there! We found her! Kill! We can't let her escape! The 4 captains roared in unison, waving their swords and sabers as they charged into the night sky. The 4 of them stabbed out with blood-red light that filled the sky, forming saber light, sword light, spear light, and phantom beasts, instantly sealing off an area of 100 miles. The mysterious expert who was invisible was instantly drowned by the blood-red light and could not escape. At the critical moment, she formed a spell with both hands and cast a powerful defensive seal. Ice Crystal Cage. In an instant, endless, icy blue light surged out, condensing into a 100-meter-wide ice crystal ball that protected her. This ice crystal ball was very tough and had a powerful defense. Normally, she would use this secret technique to suppress and imprison her opponents. However, at critical moments, she could also use it to protect herself, like a shield. Bam! 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 The blood-red light, sharp blades, and phantom beasts all hit the ice crystal ball. Instantly, all the attacks were shattered, turning into billions of blood-red light fragments that scattered in the night sky. The ice crystal ball was also densely covered in cracks and dozens of holes. Of course, the ice crystal ball was still intact and did not collapse on the spot. However, the aftermath of the battle between the two sides overflowed into the giant spirit city, causing the city to suffer a calamity. Rumble. With a series of explosions, dozens of holes appeared in the city. Tens of thousands of houses and buildings were blasted to pieces. The entire city shook, and countless gullies appeared in the ground. At least 70 to 80,000 civilians were caught in the aftermath of the battle and were instantly killed. Hundreds of thousands of people were injured by the aftermath of the battle or buried in the ruins. Seeing this, the mysterious expert frowned, and a cold light flashed in her clear eyes. Damn those heaven punishers. How could they come so quickly? Did they come here just to kill me? No, we can't fight in the city. Otherwise, giant holy city will be destroyed, and millions of civilians will die. First, lure them out of the city, and then kill them one by one. She made up her mind and did not linger to fight. Whoosh! Her figure flashed, and she teleported 200 miles away from giant holy city. Then, she turned into a ball of ice crystal light, flashing in the night sky as she quickly flew into the distance. This scene, in the eyes of Bai Yun, Shuang Yu, and Chong Ling, was invigorating. That guy really ran away. Ha ha! He knows he is no match for us and is scared out of his wits. Chase, we cannot let him escape. Tonight is the day he dies. We will finish the mission soon. The four captains did not hesitate and used teleportation's secret methods to start the chase. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Everyone flashed and jumped in the sky, closing the distance between them and the mysterious expert. In just 100 breaths, they had chased for almost 10,000 miles and were far away from giant holy city. Only now did the ball of ice crystal light slow down. She seemed to have used up too much power and could not continue to teleport. She could only fly in the night sky. Seeing this, Bai Yun, Shuang Yu, and Ling Yuan excitedly charged over and started a siege. He has no strength to escape. Surround him, don't let him live. Everyone, don't let down your guard, stay vigilant. Chapter 2369. The four captains instinctively thought that the mysterious expert was afraid to fight. If she was not afraid, why would she run? Since she was afraid, it meant that the mysterious expert was not as strong as the four of them combined. Thus, the four were excited and full of fighting spirit. Heaven-sealing blood seal, 100 refinement divine spear, space-splitting 1,000 blade slash, phantom 10 extreme sword. The four captains brandished their sabers and swords, unleashing their ultimate moves to besiege the mysterious expert. The mysterious expert seemed to know that she could not escape and stopped. She looked coldly at the four captains, a faint sneer at the corner of her mouth. Her left palm shot out a monstrous icy blue light that turned into a 1,000-foot-long ice crystal dragon shadow that shot towards Ling Yuan and Chongling. Her right hand swung the water-reversing sword, sending out thousands of sword lights that covered Bai Yun and Shuang Yu. In an instant, the sky full of sword and saber lights collided with a deafening sound. Bam! 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 Countless sword and saber lights collapsed, turning into billions of five-colored fragments that scattered in the night sky. The heaven and earth within a radius of 1,000 miles were all illuminated brightly. Violent and devastating shockwaves spread out in all directions, affecting everything within a radius of 1,000 miles. More than a dozen towering mountains collapsed into ruins on the spot. Dozens of gullies split open in the ground like bottomless abysses. The four captains were sent flying, and only stopped after retreating 10 miles. Everyone's breathing was chaotic as they panted violently. Blood appeared in their noses and mouths. Clearly, the four of them had been at a disadvantage in the clash just now and had suffered light injuries. The icy blue light that enveloped the mysterious expert was also shattered. Her true appearance appeared, standing proudly in the night sky with a cold expression. Only now did the four captains see the appearance of the mysterious expert. It was a human woman. Also, this woman was wearing an icy blue dress. Her face was beautiful, and her aura was cold and noble, like a goddess descending to the mortal world. At this moment, Bai Yun, Ling Yuan, and the others were stunned. Everyone looked at each other and revealed astonished expressions. Then, they began to discuss, secretly through voice transmission. The mysterious expert is a woman? And such a beautiful woman. It's hard to imagine that this seemingly cold and elegant woman is actually so vicious and merciless. Don't just stand there. Use the blood shadow crystal to record her appearance. The Chongling captain was the first to recover. He hurriedly took out a fist-sized diamond-shaped crystal and cast a spell to activate the formation. Immediately, the rhombus-shaped crystal lit up with a dark red light, recording the appearance of Luo Shui. Chongling wanted to record more scenes so the true face of the mysterious expert could be seen more clearly. However, when Luo Shui sensed his actions, a cold glint flashed in his eyes as he immediately teleported over. Shadowless upstream, Luo Shui let out a light shout as he held the reverse water sword, instantly thrusting out 49 icy blue sword lights. Swish! Swish! Sharp sounds occurred as 49 sword lights crisscrossed toward Chongling. However, the strange thing was that the icy blue sword light disappeared in a flash, as if it had been swallowed by the night sky. Chongling held the blood shadow crystal and was casting a spell to record the scene. When he suddenly saw Luo Shui rushing over, his expression changed, and he hurriedly put away the blood shadow crystal. As he retreated, he swung his long blade and sent out 4 enormous blades of bloody light. Yet, as he was focused on blocking the Luo Shui coming from the front, he suddenly felt a cold chill on his back. An icy danger of death suddenly attacked him, causing him to show a shocked expression. Bam bam! In the next moment, more than a dozen invisible sword lights pierced his back. With a muffled sound, blood sprayed. An enormous bloody hole appeared on Chongling's back. The wild impact sent him flying, tumbling towards the Luo Shui. At this moment, another 30 beams of invisible sword light pierced into his face. Another string of muffled sounds occurred. His face and chest were covered in blood and flesh. Even the blood-red scale armor on his chest had been pierced 3 times, and blood was gushing out from it. His body convulsed as he screamed in pain and fell from the sky towards the ground. Bai Yun, Ling Yuan, and Shuang Yu saw with their own eyes that Chongling was seriously injured. Their eyes bulged, and they roared as they charged. The 3 of them sent out bloody blades of light. They used a secret method to form the images of vicious beasts that covered the Luo Shui. The Luo Shui had wanted to take the chance to kill Chongling, but was blocked by Bai Yun and the others. He could only wave his sword to block. Bam, bam, bam. Both sides used their ultimate skills and fought fiercely in the sky, causing the sky to tremble. The rays of light were especially dazzling and lit up the night sky. Violent shock waves spread out like ripples, turning the surroundings into ruins. The seriously injured Chongling fell into the ruins, creating a large cloud of dust. He struggled up, looked down at his blood-stained body, and hurriedly took out 2 dark red pills and swallowed them. Then he staggered out of the deep pit and flew into the distance. In his present state, it was not suitable for him to continue fighting. He could only watch from afar and heal his wounds. The blood-colored scale armor on his chest had already been pierced 3 times, leaving 3 cracks on it. If the scale armor shattered, then he would not be able to keep his life and would die on the spot. Swoosh! Chongling flew through the night sky like lightning and fled into the distance. However, He had only flown 10 miles away when he was struck by a violent shockwave. Chongling spat out a mouthful of blood. His consciousness blurred, and he almost fainted. However, the powerful shock wave sent him dozens of miles away. He gritted his teeth and used his strong willpower to maintain his consciousness and continue to fly into the distance. When he was 1,000 miles away and far from the battlefield, he was finally safe. But he had completely lost his will to fight and did not dare to stop. He took out his pitch-black blade and cast a spell to turn it back into a warship 10,000 feet long. He burrowed into the warship and hurriedly ordered the black-armored warriors to steer the warship away from this place. Then, he entered a secret room and went into seclusion to heal his wounds. Swoosh! The warship tore through the night sky like lightning and quickly left. At the same time, the battle between Luo Shui, Bai Yun, Shuang Yu, and Ling Yuan reached its most intense moment. The three captains surrounded Luo Shui and used all their strength to cast their killing moves, releasing enormous blades of bloody light that covered the sky. Luo Shui was fearless in the face of the three's attacks and could advance and retreat as she pleased. Her left hand occasionally sent out palm shadows, sometimes punching with fist energy and sometimes using finger techniques to send out dazzling rainbow light. Her right hand swung the reverse water sword and continuously used wondrous sword moves, causing the three captains to be covered in wounds and forced to retreat. The two sides fought fiercely, creating loud booms that shook the world. The earth-shattering shock waves blasted everything within a radius of several thousand miles into deep pits and ruins. As time passed, the injuries of the three captains worsened. They were forced to retreat and change the battlefield. The more the three fought, the more frightened they became. Their fighting spirit quickly dissipated and they all thought of fleeing. Chapter 2370. Unknowingly, half an hour had passed. Luo Shui and the three captains had exchanged thousands of blows and the battlefield had shifted close to 10,000 miles away. Everywhere they passed by were filled with deep pits and gullies, and all the mountains and rivers had turned into ruins. Luo Shui's powers were still strong, and her expression was calm. Moreover, there weren't any obvious injuries on her body. The three captains' fates were each more miserable than the other. The silver armors they were wearing had long been destroyed. Ling Yuan's legs had been chopped off, and there were at least 40 over wounds on his body, which were so deep that his bones could be seen. Shuang Yu's 3 legs and 1 arm were chopped off, and there was a bloody hole in the blood-red scale armor on her chest. Bai Yun's injuries were even more shocking. Half of his head was gone, and all 4 of his legs were chopped off. Even though they had suffered such serious injuries, they were still alive and could still fly and fight. Such tenacious vitality made Luo Shui feel astonished and shocked. She sighed silently in her heart. The Heaven Punisher clan was indeed a natural battle clan, and their battle powers were extremely valiant. If it was a 2nd or 3rd stage realm human martial god, they would have been killed by her long ago. How would they be able to hang on till now? After all, she had not held back and used all her ultimate skills and killer moves. Unfortunately, my previous injuries have yet to fully recover, and it has affected my battle powers. If I could maintain my peak condition, I would have killed these 3 fellows long ago. Luo Shui thought in her heart as she continued to chase after the 3 captains. Since she couldn't kill the 3 captains quickly, she would chase after them relentlessly, not giving them any chance to escape. Even if she had to spend a little more time, she had to make them stay. At the same time, Bai Yun, Ling Yuan, and Shuang Yu communicated via voice transmission and unanimously decided to escape. In order to successfully escape, the 3 of them drew out their pitch-black battle swords and released 20 black armored warriors from within. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. A total of 60 black armored warriors appeared in the night sky at the same time, like a patch of black clouds. All of them were fully armed, and their bodies were surging with violent battle intent as their eyes were burning with blood-red flames. Everyone listen to my orders. Use all your strength to encircle that female martial god. No matter what, even if we die in battle, we must kill her. Kill her. no matter the cost. The three captains roared out their orders. The 60 black-armored warriors responded with a roar that shook the heavens. They all rushed towards Luo Shui without any regard for their own safety, brandishing their spears and halberds, thrusting out bloody light that covered the sky and covered the earth. Instantly, Luo Shui was surrounded, and his figure was drowned by the bloodlight that filled the sky. Even though the black-armored soldiers were only rank 3 to rank 5 martial sages, the black-armored soldiers were extremely powerful. However, there were many of them, and the might of their frenzied charge was extremely powerful. Even a martial god had to temporarily avoid them. Luo Shui's face darkened as a cold light flashed in her eyes. Her left palm was like a saber, slashing out dozens of icy blue light blades. His right hand waved the reverse water divine sword, thrusting out a sky full of cold stars. Pung pung pung. Light blades and cold stars blossomed in the night sky, sprinkling down on the crowd, instantly creating a loud explosion. At least a dozen black-armored warriors were chopped into pieces on the spot, dying without a complete corpse. However, the scene of shredded flesh and blood falling from the sky not only failed to intimidate the remaining black-armored warriors, it made them even crazier. Kill her. Even if I die, I will drag her down with me, for the glory of our race. More than 40 black-armored warriors roared as their blood boiled, charging towards Luo Shui without any fear of death. While Luo Shui was fighting with the black-armored warriors, Bai Yun, Ling Yuan, and Xuan Yu quietly executed the invisibility technique, turning around and fleeing. When they had released those 60 black-armored warriors, it was destined that those warriors would be sent to their deaths as cannon fodder. The purpose of these warriors was to help the three captains stall for time, giving them a chance to escape. Swish, swish, swish. Bai Yun, Ling Yuan, and Xuan Yu streaked across the night sky as fast as lightning, fleeing towards the northeast. After a few breaths, they had fled 1,000 miles away and were about to take out their battleships. However, just as the three of them were about to cast their techniques, they suddenly felt an icy cold air coming from behind them. Before they could react, they were pierced by 3 icy blue sword lights. Pung pung pung. With a loud bang, the 3 captains were sent flying by the giant swords, blood spurting out from their bodies. They flew for 20 miles before stopping in the night sky, hurriedly turning their heads to look behind them. In the night sky, 20 miles away, Luo Shui stood with her sword in hand, her expression as cold as ice. Not far from her, the 3 battleships had already returned to normal, becoming 10,000 feet long as they floated in the night sky. And in the night sky, 1,000 miles away, there were only 10-some black-armored warriors left, scurrying around like headless flies. Seeing this scene, Bai Yun, Ling Yuan, and Xuan Yu were filled with shock, and they couldn't help but gasp. My heavens! In just a few breaths, she killed more than 40 warriors? That damned lowly slave. How could she have come so quickly? This crazy woman, does she really want to kill us all and leave us no way out? These thoughts flashed through the minds of the 3, and their hearts surged with grief, indignation, and despair. Now, there were only 2 choices before them. They could either charge in front of Luo Shui and risk their lives to enter the battleships, relying on the battleships to block her attacks, or they could abandon the 3 battleships and flee for their lives. As for fighting Luo Shui to the end, that was absolutely impossible. As the 3 of them were hesitating, Luo Shui's figure vanished. Chilling star instant kill. Uish. She transformed into an icy star and instantly appeared in front of Ling Yuan, releasing the most dazzling light like a shooting star. Boom! With a massive boom that shook the heavens, the chilling star pierced through Ling Yuan's chest and exploded. Ling Yuan's body exploded into a rain of blood that scattered across the night sky. Bai Yun and Xuan Yu stiffened at this sight, fear flashing in their eyes. The 2 of them no longer hesitated, using a teleportation technique to turn and flee. At the same time, the 2 of them used their divine sense to order the people on the battleships to immediately drive the battleships away. Whoosh! Whoosh! Two bloody lights flashed in the night sky. Bai Yun and Shuang Yu fled northeast and northwest respectively, each teleporting 300 miles away. Luo Shui did not hesitate either, teleporting 300 miles to catch up to Shuang Yu and thrusting her sword. Boom! 1,000-foot-long icy blue sword light pierced through Shuang Yu's body, causing it to collapse into pieces of flesh and blood. Luo Shui did not stop, using another teleportation technique to pursue Bai Yun. The two of them were separated by 1,000 miles, constantly flashing in the night sky as they leapt forward. One fled for her life, the other pursued relentlessly. Every time their figures flashed, they would cross more than 300 miles. As time passed, the two of them drew closer and closer. Half an hour later, Luo Shui chased for more than 10,000 miles before finally catching up to Bai Yun. She swung her sword and shattered him. At this point, she had killed 3 of the 4 martial God Realm captains. Only Chongling had fled ahead of time, but he was also heavily injured, a tragic sight. Chapter 2371. Pity. When Luo Shui returned to the battlefield, the 3 warship captains had fled long ago. She put away the space rings of the 3 captains and turned to leave. While she had won the battle tonight and killed the 3 martial God Realm captains, her injuries had not healed. However, she had not fully recovered from her injuries to begin with, and she had used up too much of her divine power, so she was already mentally exhausted. She decided to leave Giant Spirit City and find a safe place to recover her Shun power. Once her Shun power recovered, she would carry out the assassination mission. As for the space rings of the 3 captains, she would leave them until she had time in the future to check them. She believed that since the 3 captains led over 100 martial sages, they must have a lot of resources. Also, she might be able to find some secrets from the 3 space rings and deepen her understanding of the Heaven Punisher race. The chaos in Giant Spirit City lasted for several hours before calming down. First, the City Master's mansion was destroyed and half of the city turned to ruins. Then there was an earth-shaking explosion outside the city and divine light shrouded the sky. These scenes made the people of Giant Spirit City realize that there had been a great battle between powerhouses. The next morning, people found that the foreign city master who controlled Giant Spirit City had disappeared. Even those mysterious and powerful black-armored guards were left with only a few of them. Therefore, the news that Giant Spirit City had been attacked and that the outsiders had suffered heavy casualties immediately spread out. It was early in the morning and the sun was rising. Chao Mountain City was calm. The entire city had just woken up. At this time, a pitch-black warship cut through the sky and arrived above Chao Mountain City. Whoosh! The warship suddenly shrunk 10,000 times and turned into a pitch-black sword. A Heaven Punisher covered in blood appeared in the sky. He was Chongling, who had escaped early and luckily survived. He carried the pitch-black sword on his back and hurriedly landed in Chao Mountain City and the City Master's mansion. The 7 Fiends captain who controlled Chao Mountain City and the 3 captains hiding here immediately sensed his presence and hurriedly ran out. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. At the gates of the City Master's mansion, the 7 Fiends captain and the other 3 stopped Chongling. When everyone saw Chongling covered in blood and wounds, their pupils contracted and they were puzzled. Captain Chongling, what happened to you? How did you get so heavily injured? Who did this? Chongling, weren't you hiding in Giant Spirit City with Captain Bai Yun? What the hell is going on? Where are Bai Yun and Ling Yuan? The 4 captains asked about the situation with great concern. Chongling waved his hand and said with a hateful expression, I healed for a night in the warship to recover to my present state. If it wasn't for that, I would have been unconscious a long time ago. How could I have escaped here? It's a long story. I'll explain it to you once we enter the main hall. The 7 Fiends captain nodded in agreement and hurriedly led Chongling into the discussion hall. Then Chongling recounted what had happened last night. After the 4 captains heard this, they were all shocked and their eyes flashed with anger. Captain Bai Yun guessed correctly. The mysterious expert really attacked Giant Holy City. Chongling, there's only one mysterious expert, and a human woman in a blue dress. Do you have a portrait of that woman? Do you know this person's identity? Chongling, you fled with serious injuries. What about Captain Bai Yun, Ling Yuan, and Shuang Yu? How are they? Everyone asked at once, and Chongling felt a headache. He took a deep breath and answered methodically. The identity of the blue-dressed woman is unknown, but he used the blood shadow crystal to remember her appearance. I will give the blood shadow crystal to you. Try to find this person's identity. As to Bai Yun, Ling Yuan, and Shuang Yu, when I fled, they were fighting with the blue-dressed woman. I have not contacted them and do not know their situation. Then Chongling took out the blood shadow crystal from his spatial ring and gave it to the Seven Fiends captain. The Seven Fiends captain took the blood shadow crystal and said with a serious expression, "Do not worry. I will do my best to find this person's identity. The most important thing now is to contact Bai Yun, Ling Yuan, and Shuang Yu and ask about their situation." So the other three captains took out blood jades and sent messages to Bai Yun and the others. After sending out the messages, everyone could only wait patiently for a response. Taking advantage of this time, the Seven Fiends opened the blood shadow crystal and projected a blood-colored screen of light in front of everyone. A blurry image appeared in the screen of light. A young woman in a blue dress stood in the night sky with a cold expression and murderous aura. The image lasted for a breath and then quickly dissipated. However, this was enough for the captains to see the blue-dressed woman's appearance. Everyone furrowed their brows and began to discuss with a grave expression. As expected, there's only one person and a beautiful human woman. This woman is so strong. She must be one of the strongest people of Shenwu continent. Supposedly, Shenwu continent has 3 martial gods. Of them, only the Luo Shui martial god is a woman. The Seven Fiends captain nodded and said confidently, "This blue-dressed woman is most likely the Luo Shui martial god." Chongling's lips curled into a bitter smile. He said in a low voice, "Even if we know that the mysterious expert is the Luo Shui martial god, so what? This woman is terrifyingly strong and moves alone. She appears and disappears unpredictably. We cannot surround and kill her with just a few of us. I fear that only General Dragon subduing can kill her." Hearing that, the captains looked even more awful. Their hearts were heavier and more depressed. They had accepted the mission with confidence, but now they had fallen to such a state. If they could not kill the Luo Shui martial god, they would be laughed at by Yu and the other captains. The Seven Fiends captains saw that morale was low and urged, "Do not be discouraged. The result is still unknown. Let's wait patiently. Maybe Bai Yun, Ling Yuan, and Shuang Yu have already killed the Luo Shui martial god." The other captains nodded and remained silent. Soon, 15 minutes passed. The message blood jade that everyone had hoped for did not appear. Bai Yun, Ling Yuan, and Shuang Yu did not respond. As time passed, the unease in everyone's hearts grew stronger and their expressions grew more serious. 2 hours later, 3 warships flew above Chao Mountain City and stopped. The doors of the warships opened, and several black-armored soldiers flew out and hurriedly ran into the city master's office. They charged into the discussion hall and knelt down to report the situation to the Seven Fiends, Chongling, and the others. Captain Bai Yun was killed by a mysterious expert. The blood spirit imprint has dissipated. The blood spirit imprint of the Ling Yuan ship has also dissipated. Captain Ling Yuan has also died. Captain Shuang Yu has also died in battle. Captains, please take revenge for us." Hearing this news, the Seven Fiends, Chongling, and the others widened their eyes, their faces ashen. Chapter 2372. The sudden grievous news caused everyone to be inexplicably shocked. The blood spirit mark was equivalent to the soul jade tablet that humans were skilled in. Only when one was completely dead would the jade tablet shatter. Similarly, after the experts of the Heaven Punishment race died, the blood spirit mark would dissipate. The discussion hall was deathly silent. Everyone's expressions were ugly, and the atmosphere was oppressive. The black-armored soldiers who had reported the news tactfully retreated to the side and remained silent. A long time later, the seven fiends spoke and broke the silence first. I really didn't expect that the strength of that mysterious powerhouse would be so formidable. For captains went to Giant Spirit City to ambush her. Not only were they unable to kill her, 3 died and 1 was wounded. After this seat took control of Chow Mountain City, I have been studying history books to understand the situation of Shinwu Continent. According to what this seat knows, the leaders of the 3 divine kingdoms are all 5th-level martial gods. Moreover, they had already become deities several thousand years ago and had accumulated an extremely deep foundation. It seems that the mysterious expert must be the Luo Shui martial god. Chongling and the other 3 captains nodded in agreement. One of them said worriedly, "Since the Luo Shui martial god is so strong, then I fear we will not be able to complete our mission." Chongling nodded and said, "Yes, this seat is seriously injured and can only go into seclusion to heal. The 3 of you are not a match for her, so do not continue." The 7 fiends said solemnly, "The Luo Shui martial god is not someone we can defeat. Our top priority is to report this news to Deputy General in Yu and have him deal with it." Chongling and the 3 captains immediately had ugly expressions. Humiliation and embarrassment flashed through their eyes. The 4 shook their heads and rejected this suggestion in unison. "No, there is no need to inform Yu of this matter. He wants to see us make fools of ourselves. I think you guessed long ago that the mysterious expert is the Luo Shui martial god. He is purposely tricking us, this damned bastard. City Master 7 Fiends, report this matter directly to General Dragon Subduing. Within Yu's strength, he is not a match for the Luo Shui martial god. Only General Dragon Subduing can kill the Luo Shui martial god." Since the 4 captains had unanimously agreed, the 7 fiends would not be stubborn. He nodded and said, "All right, then we'll do as you say. I'll send out a message to report the news to General Dragon Subduing. Captain Chongling, your wounds are serious. This seat will immediately arrange a secret room for you to use your powers to heal." After saying that, he warned the other 3 captains, "The 3 of you will stay in Chaoshan City and temporarily put down that mission. After I report the news, we will see what arrangements General Dragon Subduing makes." The 3 captains had no objections. They cupped their hands and left the hall. Chongling did not waste time and hurriedly went into seclusion to heal. As for the White Cloud, Ling Yuan, and Xuan Yu battleships, they landed in Chaos Han City and waited for news. 2 days passed quickly. The 7 fiends finally received General Dragon Subduing's message. The Dragon Subduing general indicated that he already knew what had happened. Since the mysterious expert was the Luo Shui martial god, she would definitely die if she dared to oppose the Heaven Punisher race. Not only that, but her Luo Shui divine kingdom would also be destroyed. However, the Heaven Punisher race had yet to gain a foothold. The current mission was to first defend the 72 cities, then take care of Pillar of Heaven's Mountain, and finally attack the Luo Shui divine kingdom. General Dragon Subduing decided to personally go to the 72 cities and take care of the Luo Shui martial god. He had already ordered the captains to be more alert and closely monitor the movements of the Luo Shui martial god. The 7 fiends, Chongling and the others, could not just sit and wait for death. They had to actively investigate the Luo Shui martial god. This way, General Dragon Subduing could quickly find the Luo Shui martial god and kill him when he reached the 72 cities. After reading the message in the Blood Jade, the 7 fiends hurriedly notified Chongling and the 3 captains. So Chongling continued to heal in the City Master's mansion. The other 3 captains left Chaoshan City with many scouts to search for news of the Luo Shui martial god. 3 days later, in the morning, in a mountain peak in a vast mountain range, Luo Shui sat cross-legged in a dark cave and slowly finished her cultivation. After 3 days and 3 nights of cultivation, her wounds had healed and her Shun power had returned to its peak. She slowly opened her eyes and murmured to herself, 3 days have passed. The news of the battle at Giant Spirit City should have spread through the 72 cities. The experts of the Heaven Punisher race must hate me to the bone and are searching for me. I have to be more careful in the future. How smart was the Luo Shui martial god? Of course, she could guess that the experts of the Heaven Punisher race would form a net and swear to kill her. But she was not worried or fearful. With her strength and methods, even if she was surrounded by 6 or 7 martial god realm captains, she could easily escape even if she was not a match. I wonder how Tianxing and Yun Yao's wounds have healed. Luo Shui frowned and murmured worriedly. Moments later, she gathered her thoughts and flashed out of the cave. Facing the rising sun, she stepped into the sky and headed northwest 100 li with each step. This time, her target was Chaoshan City. Although she knew that the Heaven Punishers would definitely gather many elites to search for her and kill her, she knew that the Heaven Punishers would definitely gather many elites. But she believed that the leader of the Heaven Punisher race would not ambush Chaoshan City. After all, she had just ambushed Giant Spirit City. How could she ambush Chaoshan City, which was a near city? She would definitely flee and ambush other cities. This was a principle that everyone knew. It was also a habitual thought. But Luo Shui wanted to do the opposite. False and true, true and false. Only then could the 72 cities fall into chaos and panic. Only then could the army of the Heaven Punisher race have no time to attack Pillar of Heaven's mountains and be tired of defending against her attacks. She was trying her best to buy time for Pillar of Heaven's mountains. 10 hours later, it was evening. When the sun was setting, Luo Shui quietly sneaked into Chaoshan City. Before entering the city, she circled the city twice and used a secret technique to check repeatedly. After confirming that there were no large groups of martial gods ambushing in the city, she began to move. Bold plans and cautious actions. This was her way of doing things. After sneaking into Chaoshan City, Luo Shui moved stealthily. She only used 2 hours to figure out the situation in the city. In the city governor's mansion, there was a martial god and more than 100 black armored warriors of the martial sage realm. On the surrounding city walls, there were more than a dozen black armored warriors hiding. She thought for a while and understood that the 100 black armored warriors were most likely the old subordinates of Bai Yun, Ling Yuan, Shuang Yu, and the others. In the dead of night, Luo Shui finally made her move. She assassinated the dozen black armored warriors guarding the city walls before sneaking into the city governor's mansion. After entering the city governor's mansion, she appeared like a phantom and quickly killed one black armored warrior after another. An hour had passed, and she had killed more than 40 black armored warriors. Chapter 2373. Whoosh! Bang! With the sharp sound of something breaking through the air, a dark red flower of blood bloomed in the night sky. Instantly, the tranquility of Chaoshan City was broken. The city guards guarding the surrounding city walls were immediately startled awake and took out their swords to search for the enemy. The guards of the city lord's mansion, more than 100 black armored warriors, quickly gathered in the plaza. The 7 fiends rushed to the plaza with a gloomy expression. After counting the number of people, they discovered that 48 black armored warriors were missing. He immediately frowned, and his eyes became malicious. Damn it, 48 people are missing without a sound? It must be that bitch Luo Shui. She has already infiltrated the city and is assassinating our warriors. The 7 fiends gnashed their teeth in anger, and their fists creaked as they clenched them. However, other than a large number of guards and warriors gathered in the plaza, the city was quiet as if nothing had happened. The 7 fiends knew that martial god Luo Shui must be hiding in the shadows, ready to attack at any time. Thus, he ordered in a low voice, "All guards and warriors, form teams of 10 and seal off the entire city lord's mansion. Tonight, I swear that I will drag Luo Shui out and tear her to pieces. I don't believe that no matter how strong she is, could she defeat so many elite warriors?" The black armored warriors acknowledged the order in unison. In a short 10 breaths, they had divided into more than a dozen teams and surrounded the city lord's mansion. The seven fiends personally used a secret technique to search the entire city lord's mansion. They had to find Luo Shui, even if they had to dig 3 feet into the ground. However, an hour passed. The seven fiends used the technique dozens of times and turned the entire city lord's mansion upside down, but they still could not find Luo Shui. Instead, they found many black-armored warriors' corpses, as well as broken remains and remnants. Reality proved that Luo Shui had already escaped from the city lord's mansion. The seven fiends felt defeated, angry, and humiliated. However, he was helpless and did not dare to remove the defenses, afraid that Luo Shui would come back. Just like that, the 100 black-armored warriors sealed off the city lord's mansion. He also rested his head on his spear and did not dare to relax. Unknowingly, an entire night passed. When the sun rose, a new day had arrived. The seven fiends and the black-armored warriors all felt deeply exhausted. Their tense minds also relaxed. According to the previous example, Luo Shui only launched assassinations in the middle of the night. Perhaps she had some kind of concealment technique that allowed her to be even more concealed in the middle of the night. Now that the sky is bright, she should have left long ago and won't appear again. After weighing the pros and cons for a moment, the seven evils ordered the black-armored warriors to withdraw their defenses and return to their residences to rest. When the black-armored warriors returned to their quarters, he also returned to his study to deal with government affairs. However, he had never expected that Luo Shui had not left Chaoshan City. She had been hiding in the city, monitoring the city lord's mansion's movements. When everyone relaxed their vigilance, she made her move again, launching a silent assassination. The previous scene repeated itself. In a short span of an hour, another 30 or so black-armored warriors were killed. Finally, when Luo Shui attacked a certain room, he encountered 4 black-armored warriors together. She instantly killed 3 black-armored warriors. The 4th soldier was seriously injured, but he didn't die on the spot. He let out a heart-wrenching scream. The sudden commotion awakened the 7 evils and the black-armored warriors. More than 80 black-armored warriors rushed to the scene of the incident and surrounded the palace. The 7 evils also flew into the sky and used his divine sense to envelop the entire palace. He immediately detected a powerful ripple of divine power in a certain room on the 3rd floor of the palace. Thus, he unhesitatingly pulled out his saber and slashed out a 100-meter-long blood-colored saber beam. Kaboom! With a massive boom, the destructive saber beam cleaved the entire palace into 2 halves, sending shards of stone flying everywhere. A violent shockwave spread out in all directions. The palace was blasted into smithereens, collapsing into rubble. Originally, there were still 10-odd black-armored warriors in the palace, as well as several dozen human guards and maids. After being struck by the 7 evils, those human guards and maids were all dead. The 10-odd black-armored warriors were also heavily injured and buried in the rubble. At the same time, a dazzling, icy light shot out of the rubble and stabbed at the 7 evils. Just in time, the 7 evils growled, his expression savage as he sneered. This time, you've been surrounded. You won't be able to escape. As he spoke, he gripped his saber tightly with both hands and slashed out 3 massive blades of blood-colored light at that icy light. Bam! 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 The 3 blades of blood-colored light collided with the icy light, creating a thunderous boom. The blood-colored light and icy blue light shattered at the same time, turning into billions of pieces. The violent shockwave swept through half of the city. In a flash, the city lord's residence, filled with palaces and pavilions, was reduced to rubble. Within a radius of 50 miles, all the houses and buildings had collapsed, and the ground was split open, leaving behind numerous deep ravines. 300,000 innocent civilians were blasted into smithereens on the spot. Even among the black-armored warriors, more than 40 of them were injured and sent flying, covered in blood. Endless smoke and dust billowed high into the sky, covering the sky and the sun. The 7 evils were only 3rd-level martial gods, and naturally were not a match for Luo Shui. He was sent flying 10,000 feet away, blood flowing from his mouth and nose as his chest rose and fell rapidly. At this time, he saw a dark red bloody light charge out of the rubble. Whoosh! That bloody light was Chongling. Previously, he had been healing in the secret room of the city lord's residence. Now that the city lord's residence was destroyed, he was also affected and naturally fled in panic. Yet, just as Chongling flew into the sky and was about to fly out of the city through the dust, that bone-chilling sword light appeared again. Whoosh! Luo Shui merged his body into the reverse water sword and turned into a 100-meter-long icy blue sword that shot towards Chongling. Chongling's injuries were too severe, and he was too weak to dodge. With a muffled bang, he was struck by the giant ice blue sword and exploded into a rain of blood on the spot. The seven evils saw Chongling being killed in an instant and did not have time to stop it. His eyes bulged in anger as he roared hoarsely. Everyone attacked together. Kill Luo Shui. As he roared, he swung his saber and charged bravely at Luo Shui. The dozens of black-armored warriors around the city lord's residence attacked Luo Shui with all their strength, ignoring their injuries. But Luo Shui did not linger. After killing Chongling in one move, she passed through the dust and flew out of the city. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, the icy blue sword flew 200 miles away and escaped Chao Mountain City. They had finally ambushed Luo Shui. How could the seven evils let go of this chance? He unhesitatingly gave chase with dozens of black-armored warriors. Everyone flew across the sky in a grandiose manner. Soon, they were thousands of miles away. At this time, Luo Shui's ice crystal sword suddenly stopped. Chapter 2374. Bam! The seven fiends were unable to evade in time and were pierced by the ice crystal sword. It was then that he realized that Luo Shui was not trying to escape, but was luring him out of the city. He thought that he could kill Luo Shui on the spot with his elite warriors. But now he knew that Luo Shui did not put it to heart at all. The so-called escape was just to leave Chaoshan City to avoid harming the innocent. Unfortunately, it was too late for the seven fiends to understand this. His burly body was instantly pierced by the ice crystal greatsword, and he flew backwards in a sorry state. The blood-colored scales on his chest crumbled, and his internal organs were crushed into pieces. The seven fiends were still in midair when he lost all signs of life and turned into a corpse. Plop! The corpse fell from the sky and crashed onto the mountain peak below, giving off a dull thud. At the same time, 80 over black-armored warriors had finally arrived at the scene. Their battle intent was high, as they charged over with murderous intent only to see the seven fiends' corpses falling from the sky. Instantly, everyone felt as though a basin of cold water had been poured over their heads. The impassioned fighting spirit and the incomparably violent killing intent instantly vanished into thin air. Everyone stopped and stared blankly in the sky, their hearts filled with shock. They looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Luo Shui did not waste any time as he charged over at lightning speed. Swoosh! The 100-meter-long ice crystal sword pierced through the sky like lightning and pierced into the crowd. Instantly, 20 over black-armored warriors were killed by the huge sword as they turned into minced meat. The rest of them were scared out of their wits as they let out terrified and desperate roars as they turned to escape in a fluster. Swoosh! The ice crystal sword pierced through the sky and once again slashed into the disorderly crowd. A dull thud was heard, and another 10 over black-armored warriors were killed on the spot. Following that, Luo Shui began his pursuit as he chased after the black-armored warriors in the sky, flying back to Chaoshan City. The 30 over black-armored warriors who were lucky enough to survive were all scared out of their wits as they fled in a fluster. Their strong will to live made them explode with unlimited potential as they teleported continuously in the sky. But facing Luo Shui, who was a fifth-degree realm martial god, they had no chance of survival. Within a short span of 100 breaths, Luo Shui had killed all the black armored warriors. Not a single person could escape back to Haoshan City. When Luo Shui returned to the city, all of Chao Mountain City was in chaos. Hundreds of thousands of warriors and commoners fled in panic, rushing towards the city gate like a tide. Luo Shui ignored the chaos in the city and quietly returned to the ruins of the city lord's mansion. She released her divine sense and searched through the ruins for a moment. Then, she found 3 pitch-black cold swords. These 3 swords were all divine artifacts, but they were actually transformed from 3 battleships. Luo Shui kept the 3 swords into his spatial ring, keeping them for future research. Then, she used an invisibility technique and quietly left Chaoshan City. In today's battle, she was not injured and did not use up too much energy. Her divine power was still abundant, so she didn't waste any time and quickly rushed to the next city. In the next 4 days, she attacked 3 more cities. In total, they had killed 1 Martial God Realm captain and more than 40 Martial Sage Realm black armored soldiers. However, when she arrived at the 4th city, she realized that the situation was not good. 6 martial gods and almost 200 black armored warriors had gathered in the city. Moreover, those martial gods and black armored warriors had all used concealment techniques to hide. It was obvious that Luo Shui had attacked several cities in the vicinity. The martial gods and martial sages of the surrounding cities had calculated that her next target would be here, so they had rushed here to ambush her. Fortunately, Luo Shui was cautious. Before carrying out the assassination plan, she had investigated the situation in the city. If she had rushed in, she would have been surrounded by many experts. At that time, even if she didn't die in battle, she would have been seriously injured to escape. Therefore, Luo Shui quietly left the city and searched for her next target. In the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Tower, the 6th level of the dark space, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao sat cross-legged in the dark space, their bodies covered in 5-colored spiritual light. Today was the 15th day since they had entered the Divine Pagoda to recuperate. Only half a month had passed in the outside world, but the 2 of them had been in seclusion in the 6th level of the Divine Pagoda for 2 years. After 2 years of treatment, Ji Tianxing's injuries had finally healed. His magic power had completely recovered, and he had reached his peak state. Moreover, his martial arts foundation had become more solid, and his magic power had become more profound. As for Yun Yao's injuries, they had already healed a year ago. In the following year, she had been cultivating and working hard to break through to the 8th level martial sage realm. Although she had not broken through to the 8th level, her strength had doubled, and her magic power had become more vigorous. If she was given another 2 years, she would definitely be able to break through. However, she knew that the situation at the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains was critical, and she could not delay any longer. Swoosh! The 5-colored spiritual light that enveloped her body dissipated, and she had ended her cultivation. After opening her eyes, she stood up and flew to Ji Tianxing's side. Ji Tianxing had a telepathic connection with her and hurriedly stopped his cultivation and ended his seclusion to recuperate. Yin Yao looked at him with concern and asked, "Tianxing, looking at your complexion and soul aura, have you recovered to normal?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said calmly, "We have been recuperating for 2 years, and half a month has passed in the outside world. I wonder if the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains is safe? Didn't you lead the fleet to attack the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains?" Yin Yao also looked worried and said, "There is no time to lose. Let's hurry back to the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains." Ji Tianxing did not hesitate and brought her out of the dark space and returned to the 5th level of the Holy Pagoda. The 2 of them stood on the demon god altar, and Ji Tianxing opened the great Luo god array. Swoosh! A white light teleportation door appeared on the altar. The 2 of them stepped into the light door and left the Holy Pagoda. In the next moment, the 2 of them appeared in the 5 elements world and stood on the peak of a barren mountain. Yin Yao summoned the Glaze Fire Dragon and brought her and Ji Tianxing back to the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. On the way, Ji Tianxing took out 2 communication jade slips and sent them to Huanglong Daoist and Luo Shui to ask about the situation. It didn't take long for Huanglong to send back a message. Master, don't worry. Everything is fine at the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. The alien fleet has not attacked. In addition, I've found out that a mysterious expert has appeared in the 72 cities. This expert appears and disappears unpredictably. He has killed several martial gods and a large number of black-armored soldiers, but he hasn't been caught. After hearing this news, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao heaved a sigh of relief. Both of them could guess that the so-called mysterious expert must be martial god Luo Shui. As expected, Ji Tianxing soon received a reply from Luo Shui. Tianxing, I'm very relieved that you and Yun Yao have recovered from your injuries. Now, I've assassinated the experts of the Heaven Punishers in the 72 cities and created chaos, causing many experts to surround me. Their plan to attack the Pillar of Heaven's mountains has been disrupted by me. Chapter 2375. Luo Shui was alone, creating chaos in the 72 cities filled with martial gods. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were well aware of how dangerous her situation was. Therefore, the two of them would never let Luo Shui fight alone. They stayed in the Divine Pagoda to cultivate in seclusion. They even changed their route and no longer rushed back to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Instead, they went straight to the 72 cities. On the way to the 72 cities, Ji Tianxing sent a message to Huanglong Daoist, ordering him to guard the Pillar of Heaven's mountains well. Then, he sent a message to Luo Shui, asking about her situation and plans. Luo Shui told him and Yun Yao about what had happened. She also suggested that it was best to act separately. It would be better to restrain the foreign race experts in the 72 cities. Ji Tianxing expressed his agreement, so he didn't meet up with her. He and Yun Yao planned to rush directly to the 72 cities to carry out the assassination mission. The ruins of God was not far from the 72 cities. The glazed fire dragon flew for a day and a night before arriving in the 72 cities. The two of them entered a 1,000-year-old ancient city called Yang. This city was in the southernmost part of the 72 cities. There were spies from the Pillar of Heaven's mountains hidden in it. Before entering Yang City, Ji Tianxing had contacted the spies in the city and understood the situation in the city. There were 15 martial sage realm black armor guards in the city. There was also a martial god realm captain previously. However, after Luo Shui created chaos, the captain left Yang City. According to the spies' speculations, the captain might have met up with the other captains and ambushed Luo Shui. When Ji Tianxing heard this news, he made Yang City his first assassination target. In the evening, the glazed fire dragon stopped in a mountain range outside the city. Yun Yao kept the glazed fire dragon. She and Ji Tianxing used the invisibility technique and quietly sneaked into Yang City. Yang City was protected by a sacred array with a radius of 200 miles. However, Ji Tianxing easily broke the array and opened a hidden gap. When he and Yun Yao sneaked into the city, they were not discovered by anyone and did not raise any alarm. The two of them quietly shuttled through the city, silently approaching the city lord's mansion. As time passed, night fell. A soundless assassination began. Ji Tianxing's consciousness locked on several black-armored guards in a certain palace. One of them was cultivating in an underground secret room, trying to break through to the rank 4 martial sage realm. Chua! Ji Tianxing silently appeared in the corner of the secret room and launched an attack from the darkness. Swish! With a flick of his right hand, he shot out a 3-inch-long golden flying dagger. A golden light flashed, and the flying dagger instantly pierced through the black-armored guard's chest. A bloody hole the size of a fist appeared on the cold, pitch-black armor. The terrifying god, slaying flying knife, shattered the blood-colored scales on the man's chest and flew out from his back. The black-armored guard died on the spot. Even at the moment of his death, he still didn't understand what was going on. He also couldn't guess who the person who had tried to assassinate him was. When the black armored guard's corpse slowly fell to the ground, Ji Tianxing also left the secret room and quietly rushed to the next one. In a certain room on the second floor of the palace, this person was learning the human race's language and writing to understand the situation in Shenwu continent. Ji Tianxing silently appeared in the room and had just raised his hand to shoot out the god-slaying flying knife when this person was alerted. He had a premonition that death was imminent, and he didn't even turn his head. Instead, he subconsciously curled up and moved to the side. Such sharp intuition and decisive response made Ji Tianxing have a whole new level of respect for him. However, all of this was futile against the god-slaying flying knife. Swish! A golden light flashed, and the 3-inch-long god-slaying flying knife instantly pierced through the black armored guard's back. The flying knife pierced through the black armor and also destroyed the scales on his chest. His life force and his lifetime's worth of strength collapsed at the same time. He didn't even have time to scream before he was instantly killed. The flying knife circled around the room once before returning to Ji Tianxing's hand. When the guard's corpse fell to the ground, Lu Yin turned around and left the room to search for his next target. At the same time, Yin Yao was on the other side of the city lord's manor, where she had dealt with 2 black armored guards. She had also stealthily appeared and used her shadowless twin swords to instantly kill her targets. The husband and wife split up and quickly killed 1 black armored guard after another. After a full 100 breaths of time, the 2 of them had killed 10 people without making a single sound. Within the city lord's manor, there was only 1 black armored guard left, and he was handling some matters in the study. Ji Tianxing was the first to arrive, and he shot out the god-slaying flying knife and easily killed this person. The husband and wife then quietly left the manor and headed to the north and south gates respectively to assassinate the remaining 4 black armored guards. The 4 guards were on duty today, and they were overseeing the north and south gates. They commanded a large number of city guards and were in charge of maintaining the city's great defensive array. When Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao arrived, the 4 black armor guards were patrolling the city walls with vigilant expressions. Even so, they could not escape the fate of being killed. Whoosh! A ray of golden light streaked across the night sky on the north city wall. The god-slaying flying knife pierced through the chest of a black armored guard, instantly killing him. This person's body shook, and he fell onto the city wall, dying in front of everyone's eyes. There were hundreds of city guards in the surroundings who witnessed this scene with their own eyes. They were all shocked and exclaimed. However, they were not afraid or depressed. Instead, they were secretly delighted. After all, these ordinary city guards were all human martial artists. They were only forced to surrender and submit to the Heaven Punisher race's ferocious might. Soon, a ray of golden light lit up on the west city wall and disappeared in the night sky. The black armored guard was reprimanding the city guards in a dignified manner when he suddenly died. The city guards, who were filled with fear after being reprimanded, were dumbfounded and could not help but gasp. Just like that, Ji Tianxing easily killed 2 targets. Throughout the entire process, he did not show his face. He only secretly released the god-slaying flying knife. Soon, Yin Yao also completed her mission and successfully killed 2 black armored guards. At this point, all 15 soldiers of the Heaven Punisher race in Yang'an City had been killed. To Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao, this was not the first time they had assassinated the elites of the Heaven Punisher race. However, there was no doubt that this was their most successful assassination. After all, both of them had reached the 7th rank martial sage realm, and their combat strength was comparable to that of a half-step martial god. The 2 of them quickly met up and silently exited the city. Originally, Ji Tianxing had intended to rescue the city masters, guards, and nobles who had been controlled by the Heaven Punisher race. He could use the power of the Heaven Patching Pearl to remove the soul controlling power in their bodies. However, Yin Yao had dissuaded him. There was no need to do so and waste time. After all, they could only assassinate the elites of the Heaven Punisher race and could not truly save Yang'an City. They had to chase the army of the Heaven Punisher race out of the 72 cities so that they could be saved. Otherwise, once Ji Tianxing removed the soul-controlling technique, the elites of the Heaven Punisher race would rush over and use the soul-controlling technique again. Chapter 2376. In the next 5 days, Tianxing and Yun Yao attacked 7 cities consecutively. There were more than 130 Heaven Punisher warriors in these 7 cities. However, without exception, all of them were killed by the 2 of them. Moreover, the assassination process was very easy and caught the enemy off guard. Tianxing did not need to show himself. He secretly released the god-slaying flying dagger and easily took the lives of the Heaven Punisher warriors. This way, he would not consume much of his dermic powers. He would not feel tired or slack off even after 5 days of continuous operation. On the morning of the 6th day, the sun rose from the east and golden sunlight shone on the earth. Huai City, which was located in the mountains, welcomed a new day. At the same time, 2 uninvited guests were welcomed. Tianxing and Yun Yao quietly broke the city defense array and sneaked into the city. As usual, the 2 of them remained invisible and silently entered the city governor's mansion. However, Tianxing suddenly discovered that there were not only more than 10 martial sages in the city governor's mansion, but there was also a martial god elite. He immediately frowned, and the corners of his mouth curled into a playful sneer. In the past few days, there were no martial gods guarding the cities that we attacked. Hadn't those martial god realm captains all gathered together and joined forces to ambush Luo River? Why is there a captain guarding this Huai city? Yun Yao asked telepathically. Then what should we do? Should we kill him or not? Tianxing nodded and said coldly, since we have encountered him, how can we let him go? We have not fought with a martial god elite for a long time. This is a good opportunity to practice. All right, Yun Yao nodded in agreement, and a look of anticipation appeared in her eyes. Then, the 2 of them split up and quickly assassinated 1 black armor warrior after another. In just a few minutes, the 2 of them had killed 10 black armor warriors. It was only then that the captain guarding the city governor's mansion realized that the situation was not good. Enemies have charged in. Prepare to fight. The captain, who was wearing silver armor, shouted angrily in the Heaven Punisher language. Immediately, the 4 surviving black armor guards in the city lord's mansion were alarmed. They hurriedly drew their swords and halberds and rushed to the square, searching for traces of the enemy. At this moment, the silver-armored captain took out a saber and teleported to a certain attic, appearing behind Yun Yao. Yun Yao had just killed a black armor guard. His corpse was lying on the ground, and blood was seeping out. When the captain saw this, his body trembled. His eyes were filled with deep fear. Damned lowly servant, you are Luo Shui? 10 days ago, he had received news that Luo Shui martial god was assassinating the experts of the Heaven Punishers in the 72 cities to create chaos. For captains besieged Luo Shui, but not only were they unable to kill Luo Shui, they even ended up with 3 dead and 1 injured. This person knew how terrifying Luo Shui martial god strength was and was rather fearful. Now that they saw Yun Yao appear and saw her beautiful face, cold and noble temperament, they thought that she was Luo Shui. Naturally, they were filled with fear. However, Yun Yao remained silent and did not reply. She did not even have the intention to attack. Instead, she turned around and fled without hesitation. Swoosh! She turned into a wisp of silver-white light and streaked across the sky like lightning, fleeing out of the city. The silver-armored captain was stunned for a moment, and then his expression changed. He shouted with shame and anger, "No, she's not Luo Shui martial god." According to the information we received, Luo Shui is wearing an ice blue dress and has the strength of a level 5 martial god. This woman in white is obviously not a martial god. She's only a martial sage. As he spoke, he used a teleportation secret technique and chased after Yun Yao out of the city. "You are just a martial sage. How dare you sneak into Huai city and assassinate my warriors? You lowly servant, you must be tired of living. If I don't tear you into pieces today, Won't I become the shame and laughingstock of the entire tribe? The silver-armored captain was blinded by anger, and monstrous murderous intent burst out from his body. He locked onto the aura of Yun Yao's spiritual soul and chased after her out of Huai's city. He was still in hot pursuit. It seemed that he would not stop until he killed Yun Yao. However, Yun Yao kept teleporting in the sky at an extremely fast speed. The silver-armored captain could not catch up with her in a short period of time. At this moment, the 4 surviving black-armored guards also chased out of Huai's city with murderous intent. However, they were intercepted by Ji Tianxing when they flew out of the city and over a mountain range. Swoosh! Ji Tianxing appeared behind them like a ghost. He raised his hand and threw out the god-slaying flying dagger. At the same time, he waved the burial of heaven's sword and slashed out 3 huge starry swords. Boom! With a muffled explosion, one of the black armor guards was hit by the god-slaying flying dagger. A huge bloody hole appeared in his chest, and scales flew out. The man died instantly. His body fell from the sky and crashed into the mountain peak. The other 3 black armor guards were dumbfounded when they saw their companion being killed instantly. However, they immediately came to their senses when they saw the huge starry swords slashing down on their heads. They released a sky full of bloody blades to block Ji Tianxing's attack. Bang! 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 A series of muffled explosions sounded. The bloody blades collapsed and shattered. However, the 3 huge starry swords were intact and hit them hard. The 3 of them were sent flying. A hideous wound appeared on their bodies, and dark red blood gushed out. The 2 sides only exchanged 1 blow, and the 3 black armor guards were severely injured. They were horrified and turned to flee toward Huai's city. Ji Tianxing sneered. He controlled the god-slaying flying dagger with his divine telekinesis and attacked one of the black armor guards. Swoosh! A golden light flashed in the sky. The god-slaying flying dagger instantly pierced through the man's chest and killed him. The other 2 were even more horrified. They desperately unleashed their strongest power and sped up to escape. However, Ji Tianxing controlled the god-slaying flying dagger with his divine telekinesis and attacked the 2 of them. Swoosh! The dark golden light flashed across the sky and pierced through the 2 men's chests. It then flew back to Ji Tianxing's hand. When the 2 bodies fell from the sky and landed in the mountains, Ji Tianxing had already left. Swoosh! He traversed 100 miles with each step and chased towards the north. In just 10 breaths, he had chased for thousands of miles and caught up with Yun Yao. At that moment, Yun Yao and the captain of the silver-armored ship were fighting fiercely in the sky. It was not that Yun Yao had been caught. She felt that this place was far enough away from Huai's city and would not affect the innocent people. She held the shadowless dual swords in the sky and kept stabbing the captain of the silver-armored ship. The captain of the silver-armored ship sneered. His eyes were full of contempt and mockery. He had used the power of his fighting soul to form a crimson light shield that covered a radius of 300 miles. He had sealed this area. Yun Yao would not be able to escape. In his opinion, Yun Yao would not be able to escape. She would definitely die. However, when he attacked without restraint, releasing a bloody light that filled the sky towards Yun Yao, an incomparably sharp chill suddenly appeared behind him. Swoosh! Chapter 2377. Bam! A loud, muffled explosion resounded through the sky. The god-slaying flying dagger pierced into the silver-armored captain's back when he was completely unprepared. The flying dagger had been aimed at his back and was about to pierce through his chest to kill him. However, he was indeed a martial god. At the moment of life and death, his body had expanded to 3 times its original size. Although the god-slaying flying dagger had pierced through his armor and body, it had not destroyed the blood-colored scales on his chest. A large amount of dark red blood spurted out from his body and scattered across the sky. A large bloody hole had appeared in his abdomen, and his organs could be seen clearly. The violent and unparalleled force of impact sent him flying. The heart-wrenching pain caused him to let out a furious roar. After he had flown 1,000 feet away, he finally stabilized himself. He suddenly turned his head to look behind him, glaring at Ji Tianxing with shock and anger. It was only then that he realized that there was more than one person who had attacked Huai's city, and that white-robed, handsome, and valiant human youth was the greatest threat to his life. He had severely injured him the moment he attacked. However, as the silver-armored captain observed Ji Tianxing, his eyes narrowed and he frowned. He suddenly realized a problem. Ji Tianxing was not a martial god. He was only a martial sage. Even if Ji Tianxing was able to hide his cultivation level and aura, it would still be useless. After all, there was a fundamental difference between divine power and spiritual power. The silver-armored captain was shocked and angry. He cursed with a distorted face. D*MNB****. You worm, you really don't know what's good for you. In his opinion, Ji Tianxing was only a martial sage. He had used a divine class hidden weapon to attack him and severely injure him. Now that Ji Tianxing had been exposed, he wanted to crush Ji Tianxing in a head-on manner. He would not give Ji Tianxing a chance to attack him. 4 directions, flying dragon slash. The silver-armored captain roared angrily. He held his saber with both hands and slashed out a bloody ray. Suddenly, the dark red bloodlight turned into 24 dragon shadows and attacked Ji Tianxing from all directions. This was one of the silver-armored captain's trump cards. It had the power to seal and kill everything. He attacked with hatred and erupted with his strongest power, not giving Ji Tianxing a chance to escape at all. He wanted to kill him with a single move. At this critical moment, Ji Tianxing's eyes were firm and fearless. He actually didn't use the chaotic heaven secret art to evade, and instead chose to face it head-on. Celestial dragon tyrant body. He let out a low roar, and his entire body emitted a dazzling golden light. In an instant, he turned into a 30-meter tall giant. Sword shatters the void. He gripped the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and concentrated on thrusting out 36 times, attacking the 24 blood-colored dragon shadows. 36 starlight swords bloomed, dazzling like stars surrounding the moon. The 24 gigantic crimson dragon projections also lost their luster. Bang, 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 bang. The starlight swords collided with the crimson dragon projections, and there was a loud explosion that shook the universe, and a destructive shock wave burst forth. The sword radiance and the dragon projections collapsed at the same time, turning into billions of light fragments. The shock wave swept across a radius of 1,000 miles. Heaven and earth instantly collapsed. Cracks appeared in the sky, and densely packed gullies appeared on the ground. More than a dozen mountains and mountain ranges were razed to the ground and destroyed into ruins. Ji Tianxing and the silver-armored captain were both sent flying. They only stopped after retreating for 10 miles. The two of them stood in the sky with their backs bent, panting heavily. They were evenly matched in this exchange of blows. Neither of them had gained the upper hand. The outcome shocked the silver-armored captain, and he wore an expression of disbelief. Ji Tianxing, on the other hand, looked pleased. He was very satisfied. After all, the silver-armored captain had used all his strength, but he hadn't. The facts proved that he had the combat strength of an LV2 martial god, even without using the chaotic heaven secret art and the god-slaying flying dagger. If he used his trump card, it would be easy for him to kill a LV2 martial god expert. At this moment, Yun Yao, who was ready to attack, charged out from the sky and slashed at the silver-armored captain with a shadowless sword in her hand. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. More than a dozen shadowless sword radiances with the power to slash through everything enveloped the silver-armored captain. He immediately became alert and sensed that death was imminent. He retreated without hesitation by teleporting away. Swoosh! In a flash, he retreated 100 miles away. However, the shadowless sword radiances also crossed 100 miles in the sky and hit him with a loud bang. Bang, bang, bang. The silver-armored captain was hit by the shadowless sword radiances. blood radiance burst out from his body, and he was sent flying violently. The silver-armored captain's armor completely collapsed, and it turned into countless pieces that scattered in the sky. More than a dozen wounds appeared on his chest and back. They were long, narrow, and hideous. They were so deep that his bones could be seen. He had almost been cut in half. One of his front legs had been cut off by the shadowless sword, and blood was gushing out. The immense pain caused the silver-armored captain to go berserk, and he roared hysterically. At this moment, Ji Tianxing rushed up again and shouted with a cold expression, "Die!" As he spoke, he waved his hand and threw out the god-slaying flying dagger. Swoosh! A golden light pierced the sky and disappeared in a flash. The sharp god-slaying flying dagger locked onto the silver-armored captain's aura and stabbed him with unstoppable force. He sensed that death was imminent. His face was full of horror, and he wanted to teleport away to avoid it. However, the god-slaying flying dagger was too fast. It was completely beyond his expectations. Bam! Amidst the dull, loud noise, the god-slaying flying dagger slammed into his chest and exploded with a power that could destroy everything. The silver-armored captain's chest was instantly blasted open with a terrifying bloody hole. The dark red scales and internal organs were all blown to smithereens. Even his body was covered in dense cracks. Blood splattered everywhere. The scales were destroyed. The silver-armored captain's life was instantly cut off. His life's divine power also collapsed and dissipated. His body stiffened in the sky. His eyes stared at Ji Tianxing. His throat trembled violently. He wanted to say something. However, blood kept flowing out of his mouth and nose. He could no longer make a sound. After 2 short breaths, the scarlet flames in his eyes were extinguished. He was completely dead. Plop! The corpse fell from the sky and crashed into the ruins below. Dust flew everywhere. The corpse that was already full of cracks was also smashed into pieces. It was covered by dust and soil. The magical power that covered the sky gradually disappeared. The raging shock waves gradually dissipated. The world gradually returned to peace. Ji Tianxing flew to Yun Yao's side and stood still. He looked at her with concern. He was only relieved when he saw that she was safe. Yun Yao understood his thoughts. She said, "Don't worry about me. I have already tested it out. With the shadowless sword in hand, I am confident that I can defeat this person within 10,000 moves. Even if he has other trump cards, I will not be defeated." Ji Tianxing nodded and smiled with relief. "That's good. If we work together, we can also quickly kill those martial god realm captains." Chapter 2378. In the center of the 72 cities, sky-reaching city, nearly 20 captains of the martial god realm gathered in the majestic and solemn city, Lord's Mansion. Everyone gathered in the conference hall. Their expressions were somewhat ugly, and their gazes were rather solemn. And Yu, who was sitting in the main seat, was also frowning and pondering. There was a hint of anger between his brows. Although it was noon and the sun was blazing outside the hall, there was a trace of heat in the air. However, the atmosphere in the conference hall was heavy and oppressive. Everyone's hearts were heavy. At this moment, a messenger guard in black armor quickly stepped into the hall. This person came to the hall and knelt down to salute. He reported to Yu, reporting to Deputy General N, "I just received news that Huai City was attacked this morning. Captain Shi Hao, who was guarding Huai City, was killed by a mysterious powerhouse. More than a dozen elite soldiers in the city were also killed." Suddenly hearing this news, the 20 captains' bodies stiffened, revealing a strong sense of anger. However, Yu frowned. Deep confusion flashed in his eyes. Huai City? It was attacked this morning? No. Huai City is in the southwest, but martial god Luo Shui has been in the eastern region these 2 days. Could it be that she ran to the southwest so quickly? The messenger guard in black armor was startled and reported truthfully, "Deputy General, in the past 5 days, 8 cities in the southwest region have been attacked. At the same time, martial god Luo Shui has been active in the eastern region. She attacked 10 cities in a row and assassinated 4 captains." After being reminded, And Yu's expression changed, and his eyes flashed. I understand. The mysterious powerhouse who assassinated our soldiers is not only martial god Luo Shui, but also another group of people. This group of people and martial god Luo Shui acted at the same time, but they cooperated with each other from a distance. They want to create chaos. The 20 captains in the hall all came to a sudden realization, and their faces were full of indignation. I see. No wonder I keep feeling that things are very strange. Yesterday, the messenger guard reported 2 pieces of news. In the afternoon, a city in the east was attacked, and, at night, a city in the south was assassinated. When I heard the news, I felt that something was wrong. Damned humans! How dare you join forces to assassinate our soldiers? You must be tired of living. In the past half a month, 12 captains and more than 300 warriors have been killed. The soldiers of my clan are already in a state of panic. They no longer dare to defend the city alone. Deputy General, and please think of a way to kill those damned bastards. Otherwise, our soldiers will continue to be killed and our morale will be greatly affected. It will be difficult for us to rule the 72 cities. Many captains were filled with righteous indignation. They were both angry and helpless. If they had a choice, they would rather fight the enemy head-on, even if they had to die on the battlefield. But now, the enemy had been lurking in the dark, sneakily attacking and assassinating. This made them unable to guard against it, and they were in a very passive position. And you saw that the crowd was agitated and could not help but feel even more anxious. He knew very well that if he did not come up with an effective solution, the captains guarding the cities would probably abandon their cities and flee. Only when 7 or 8 captains gathered together would there be a sense of security. If 1 or 2 captains were to guard a certain city, it would be equivalent to waiting for death. This kind of feeling was really too sullen and too humiliating. After muttering to himself for a moment, and Yu said with a dignified expression, "Everyone, calm down." A few days ago, General Long Fu ordered us to closely monitor Luo Shui's movements. Now, General Long Fu has personally come to the 72 cities and is preparing to personally deal with the Luo Shui martial god. He did not join us and is moving alone to investigate the Luo Shui martial god's whereabouts. I believe that General Long Fu will be able to kill the Luo Shui martial god in 2 or 3 days at most. Hearing this, the captain's emotions calmed down slightly. However, there were still some who raised questions and expressed their worries. Deputy General, and if General Long Fu is going to personally deal with the Luo Shui martial god, then what about the other group of mysterious powerhouses? Even if the Luo Shui martial god is killed, there's still a group of people causing trouble. And Yu hurriedly waved his hand and comforted the crowd. The strongest humans on Shinwu continent are only the 3 martial gods. Aside from Luo Shui, the other 2 martial gods cannot possibly assassinate our clan soldiers. Therefore, the group causing trouble in the southwest will not be too strong. Everyone, don't worry. I will now ask General Long Fu to personally lead everyone to kill that group of people. After he finished speaking, he took out a communication bloodjade and sent a message to General Long Fu. Everyone looked at him expectantly and patiently waited for the news. After a few minutes, a bloodlight flew over from the horizon and landed in Yu's hand. It was a bloodjade, and it was General Long Fu's reply. And Yu hurriedly opened the bloodjade and read the message within. A moment later, he revealed a gratified smile and said excitedly, "Everyone, General Long Fu is already on the move and will soon capture the Luo Shui martial god. At the same time, General Long Fu has also agreed to my suggestion. I will lead everyone to the southwest and personally kill the other group of people." After hearing the exact news, the captains felt as if a huge stone had been lifted from their hearts, and they all revealed expressions of relief. And you did not waste any time and immediately called out the names of 15 captains and led them to the southwest. The remaining 5 captains remained in Skirich City, ready to provide support at any time. In the dead of night, the world was as dark as ink. Luo Shui flew high in the sky, cutting through the night sky like a phantom as she rushed north. Tonight, her target was Evercalm City, which was 80,000 kilometers away. Over the past half a month, she had killed 10 martial god captains and more than 200 black armored soldiers. She had contacted Ji Tianxing and exchanged information. After learning that Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had also killed 2 captains and more than 100 black armored soldiers, she felt gratified. As she rushed to Evercalm City, she silently calculated in her heart. Although the army of the Heaven Punisher has many people and is extremely powerful, they have only just entered the continent. However, they had only just entered Shenwu continent, and they had yet to gain a firm foothold. Before they could conquer the world, we killed 12 martial gods. Such heavy losses will definitely cause the leader of the Heaven Punisher to be infuriated and driven mad. We don't have the qualifications to face the Heaven Punisher head-on, so we can only assassinate and ambush them. If this continues, we will kill all the martial gods of the Heaven Punisher sooner or later and chase them out of Shenwu continent. When she thought of this, her conviction became even more firm, and her heart was filled with anticipation. However, in the depths of her spirit, she suddenly felt a throbbing sensation. She had a vague premonition that an ice-cold aura of death was quietly approaching. As a veteran martial god, this sudden premonition was her unique sensing ability with her god soul. This ability, which was similar to a sixth sense, was extremely mysterious and indescribable. However, she firmly believed that this premonition would not be wrong. Chapter 2379. Just as Luo Shui used her invisibility technique and merged with the night sky, swish, a dark red blood light suddenly attacked from behind, releasing a dazzling radiance in the night sky. It was a sharp blade that was 100 feet long. Although it was condensed from divine power, it was as powerful as a divine artifact. Swoosh! The night sky where Luo Shui was instantly sliced open by the bloodlight blade, creating a 10,000-foot-long crack. Fortunately, Luo Shui had turned invisible and retreated in time. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable if the bloodlight blade had hit her. Luo Shui, who was invisible, was in the night sky 100 miles away. Seeing the bloodlight blade slash open the night sky with her own eyes, she was also shocked by the violent and unparalleled power. Her clear eyes were filled with shock, and her expression became very serious. "Who is it? You actually followed me silently and used such a powerful attack to kill me? Could it be the leader of the Heaven Punishers?" She knew very well that you definitely did not have such strength. It was even impossible for all the captains to do so. The person who secretly attacked her was definitely stronger and had a higher status than all the captains. That person must be the leader of the Heaven Punishers. At the same time, in the night sky 800 miles away, a huge figure appeared out of thin air. This was a monster that was as big as a mountain and was half human, half beast. Its upper body was like a human's, but its lower body was like a lion's. It had 4 thick hooves. 2 black dragons stretched out from his back. Their ferocious dragon heads stretched out and opened their bloody mouths. Their ferocious might overflowed into the sky. He was the dragon subduing general. This woman does have some skills. She actually managed to dodge my soul-chasing attack. The dragon subduing general sneered. The purple flames in his eyes flickered a few times and became even more intense. Since his attack did not hit, he was sure that Luo Shui had not escaped far, so he decisively used his ultimate skill. Dragon Flame covers the sky. He waved his huge dragon claws and unleashed a blood-red flame that covered the night sky in front of him. Swoosh! The blood-red flames that blotted out the sky instantly formed a huge cage, sealing the world within 1,000 miles. This area had become a world of blood and fire, controlled by the dragon subduing general. Without a doubt, Luo Shui was unable to escape in time and was trapped by the bloodlight prison. The night sky, the mountains, and the earth had all disappeared, leaving only boundless blood and fire in all directions. An incomparable suppressive force came from all directions, fiercely suppressing her. It was as if she had fallen into a quagmire. Her flying speed was halved, and the circulation of her divine power was blocked. As a result, her fighting abilities were weakened by 30%, and she lost her drive. Moreover, the roiling blood-red flames contained a mysterious and terrifying corrosive power. Once it came into contact with her divine power shield, it would corrode and turn black, weakening and thinning out. If she did not replenish her divine power in time, the shield would collapse and dissipate. Such a scene caused her expression to become even more unsightly, and her expression was gloomy like ice. Damn it! Is this the true power of the Heaven Punishers? She had killed 10 captains and had come into contact with the special divine power of the Heaven Punishers many times. However, the strength of those captains was too weak, and they could not fully utilize the effects and power of the special divine power. Luo Shui did not take it to heart. Now that she was trapped by General Dragon's subduing, she finally knew how strange and powerful the Heaven Punishers were. Whoosh! However, she was not afraid. Her body lit up with dazzling ice blue light, forming an oval ball of light. Weak water, ice heart technique. Ice blue water flowed quickly in the ball of light, releasing a power that could purify everything. The blood flames that surged from all directions were all dispersed and extinguished when they came into contact with the water blue ball of light. The pressure on Luo Shui was greatly reduced. She hurriedly took out the reverse water divine sword and warily observed her surroundings. At this moment, a mocking sneer sounded from the blood fire behind her. Keek, martial god Luo Shui, I've finally found you. The sinister voice was as unpleasant and piercing as dry tree bark rubbing against each other. Moreover, General Dragon subduing was speaking the human language, and his accent was very strange. Luo Shui suddenly turned around and looked coldly at him. Seeing his appearance, Luo Shui frowned and said with disdain, as expected of an evil demon of the foreign race, "Even your appearance is so ugly and disgusting." General Dragon subduing was not angry. He looked as if he had a card up his sleeve. He sneered and said, "Don't compare my race with a lowly demon race. They are not worthy. My race is the strongest race that conquers the heavens and dominates tens of thousands of worlds. We have the most outstanding bloodline in the world. Besides that, I'm a renowned and handsome great hero in the grand world of heaven treason, and I've charmed countless women. You despise me because I am ugly. You can only blame your lowly bloodline for not knowing how to appreciate me." General Dragon's subduing's tone was very confident and calm. It was as if he was telling the truth and had no intention of defending himself. This made Luo Shui frown even more, and the disdain in her eyes deepened. "Kakik, even an ugly monster like you can be called handsome and handsome? You Heaven Punishers women have a distorted sense of beauty. I pity you Heaven Punishers even more. How ugly are you?" Luo Shui's disdain were real and not exaggerated at all. General Dragon subduing had conquered the heavens and was used to seeing the reactions of powerhouses from various races, but he was still infuriated by Luo Shui's attitude. He no longer discussed this matter and instead said with a sinister smile, "Martial god Luo Shui, you have wantonly assassinated my soldiers in my territory. I have been tracking you for 7 days. Tonight, I have finally caught you, and I am not here to bicker with you. I have heard that you are as beautiful as a fairy on this continent, and you are known as the world's #1 beauty. Although I am unable to appreciate you, only the world's #1 beauty is worthy of my status. After all, I am the ruler of this continent and this world. You only have 2 choices now. You can either be mercilessly killed by me, or you can obediently submit and become my concubine." General Dragon's subduing's tone was unyielding and domineering, and he adopted a lofty attitude as he looked down on Luo Shui. In his eyes, Luo Shui was weak and could not escape from his grasp. Luo Shui immediately raised her eyebrows, and a disdainful sneer appeared at the corner of her mouth. Her tone was icy as she said, "Since you have already learned the human language and have some understanding of Shinwu continent, then you should have learned my ancestors' language. Then you should have learned an old saying of my clan, a toad lusting after a swan's meat. I may not be a noble swan, but you are definitely that ugly toad." General Dragon, subduing, did not fully understand her words. However, he could see that Luo Shui had chosen to resist to the death and had used words to insult him. His patience was completely exhausted. He grinned and sneered. "Very well, since you've chosen to die, then I'll fulfill your wish. Remember, the person who will kill you is the leader of the 3rd Expedition Fleet, the famous General Dragon subduing." Chapter 2380. As soon as he said that, General Dragon subduing attacked. He did not bother to use divine weapons. Instead, he raised his fists and punched at Luo Shui. The Heaven-punishing tribe was a tribe that worshipped strength and aggression. Using their unparalleled strength to crush their opponents and enemies mercilessly was their most satisfying way of fighting. Explode. General Dragon, subduing, roared. 2 blood-red fist shadows, which were as large as mountains, arrived in front of Luo Shui in an instant. Luo Shui's expression was extremely grave. Without hesitation, she waved the reverse water divine sword and launched a counterattack. 1,000 illusionary ice blade. With a wave of the divine sword, a dazzling cold light bloomed and thousands of crystal clear ice blades appeared. The thousands of ice blades formed a sword net like a barrier in front of her and toward the 2 fish shadows. Bam! 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 The ice blades and blood-red fist shadows collided, creating a series of loud bangs that shook the heavens. In the blink of an eye, the thousands of ice blades and the 2 fish shadows collapsed. They turned into millions of light shards and scattered in the dragon flame territory. Even the monstrous blood flames in the territory were shaken by the shock waves like raging waves. Seeing this, General Dragon, subduing, frowned. Purple flames danced in his eyes as his lips curled into a cold smile. Hee, no wonder you are so unyielding. So you do have some ability. You can actually take an attack with 70% of my strength. I have underestimated you previously. Luo Shui had used 100% of her strength to block General Dragon subduing's casual attack. Hearing that he had only used 70% of his strength, Luo Shui's expression did not change, but her heart skipped a beat. This ugly monster's strength has indeed surpassed level 7 Martial God Realm. I'm afraid he has reached level 8. Without a doubt, she was 3 levels below General Dragon subduing. There was no way she could win. There was no way she could win tonight's battle. She would be lucky if she could escape successfully. After making up her mind, she would not fight General Dragon, subduing head-on. Instead, she would look for an opportunity to escape. Soon, General Dragon, subduing, raised his palms again and used 100% of his strength to send out 4 palm shadows. Break! Following the dragon subduing General's roar, the 4 palm shadows were like blood-colored giant axes that could split the heavens, chopping towards Luo Shui from all directions. Before the giant axe arrived, the terrifying destructive power had already torn apart her divine power shield. If the blood-red axe had struck her, she would have been smashed into pieces even if she was protected by divine armor. At the critical moment, she held the reverse water divine sword in front of her with her right hand, while her left hand formed a mysterious spell. Her whole body burst out with a dazzling 5-colored light. Myriad waters of the same source. The dazzling 5-colored light that blotted out the sky turned into tens of thousands of water pillars of different colors, forming a huge water ball that protected her within. The black dark north water, the icy blue water of extreme frost, the blazing white water of infinity, the dark red water of Earth's core, the dark green water of life. There were so many different types of water elemental energy that it was dazzling. Such a complicated power was controlled by Luo Shui, protecting her like a shield. At this moment, she was the god that controlled the source of all water. Boom, 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 boom. The 4 blood-red axes viciously struck the 5-colored water ball, creating a deafening sound. Suddenly, five-colored light burst out, and water pillars of various attributes sprayed into the night sky, landing in the blood fire. A crack appeared in the huge, five-colored water ball. However, it was repaired by the tens of thousands of water pillars in an instant. Water was originally the most gentle power, and it could change into thousands of forms. It also had unparalleled defensive power. Luo Shui was safe and sound, but she had used too much of her magic power, and her face was slightly pale. However, the four blood-red axes were shattered, turning into blood-red fragments that fell into the blood fire to provide energy for the dragon flame territory. Haha, you are indeed one of the three divine masters. You have impressed me more and more. The dragon's subduing general sneered again, and a look of admiration flashed across his eyes as he looked at Luo Shui. Of course, although he said that, he did not show any mercy when he attacked. Invincible divine sword slash. He waved his pair of pitch-black dragon claws, creating an endless blood-red light that condensed into a blood-red battle sword that was thousands of feet long. It slashed toward Luo Shui. The blood-red battle sword was extremely huge, and one could not tell that it was condensed from divine power. It was no different from a real divine weapon. The blood fire in the entire dragon flame territory was boiling, releasing a terrifying power that increased the power of the blood-red battle sword. Kaboom! In the next moment, the blood-red battle sword struck the five-colored water ball, creating a thunderous sound. Instantly, a destructive force blasted the water ball into pieces, turning it into thousands of water pillars that splashed in all directions. Luo Shui's body trembled, and her pretty face turned as white as paper. She spat out a mouthful of blood. Her secret technique had been broken, and the source of all water that she had cultivated with her life had been shattered. She had also suffered a backlash and was severely injured. Dense cracks appeared on her internal organs, and her meridians were broken inch by inch. Her divine power had also become chaotic. Her expression became weary on the spot, and her clear and bright eyes dimmed a lot. The incomparably violent impact sent her flying, and she fell into a sea of blood and fire. Taking this opportunity, General Dragon Subduing controlled the Dragon Flame territory to release a power that could suppress everything and seal Luo Shui. Luo Shui, you are really stubborn. Just now, I tried to persuade you, but you refused to listen. Now, I will give you one last chance. I hope you can cherish it. General Dragon Subduing revealed a confident smile as he spoke in a low voice. In his opinion, Luo Shui had already been severely injured by him. Trapped in the Dragon Flame territory, she no longer had the power to resist and had become his captive. However, something he did not expect at all happened. When the surging blood flames that overflowed the heavens suppressed the Luo River from all directions, her figure vanished into thin air. Swoosh! Her tall and perfect body collapsed, turning into billions of colorful water droplets that scattered in the Dragon Flame territory. Each water droplet was as clear as a tear and as dazzling as a crystal. Moreover, there was a trace of life force in them. When billions of water droplets appeared at the same time, it was equivalent to billions of clones of Luo Shui. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Within the area of 1,000 miles in radius, a rainstorm of colorful colors began to fall. This was Luo Shui's trump card, the Tears of the Goddess. General Dragon Subduing had not expected such a beautiful scene, and he was stunned for a moment. At this moment, a dazzling white light suddenly flashed at the edge of the Dragon Flame territory. Swoosh! In just an instant, that dazzling white light that was like a treasure sword slashed through the Dragon Flame territory, tearing a crack in the bloodlight barrier. Immediately after, billions of colorful water droplets quickly passed through that crack and escaped the Dragon Flame territory. Once she returned to the pitch-black night sky, the pressure on Luo Shui was greatly reduced, and her speed doubled. She knew that General Dragon Subduing would chase after her, so she did not return to her true form. Chapter 2381. Swoosh! The dragon-subduing general regained his senses and rushed out of the dragon flame domain. He stood in the night sky and looked ahead with a sharp gaze, searching for Luo Shui's figure. However, the billions of five-colored teardrops had already merged with the heavens and earth. The dragon-subduing general's divine sense scanned a radius of 3,000 miles, but he couldn't find Luo Shui. The night sky returned to calmness, leaving only the dark red dragon flame domain, still shining with a blood-colored brilliance. Damn it, she actually managed to escape right under my nose. The dragon-subduing general frowned and cursed angrily. He originally thought that it would be easy for him to deal with Luo Shui personally. However, he now realized that he had underestimated Luo Shui's ability. He was unwilling to give up and carefully searched a few more times within a radius of 20,000 miles. However, Luo Shui had already escaped far away and her whereabouts were unknown. The dragon-subduing general had no choice but to give up the search. He took out a communication bloodjade and issued an order to the captains guarding the nearby cities, ordering them to search for traces of the Luo Shui. A day later, Luo Shui left the 72 cities and returned to the Luo Shui God Nation. She entered the Luo Shui God Nation's Luo Shui God altar and prepared to enter seclusion to heal her injuries. She had used the ultimate skill, Goddess Tear, to successfully escape the dragon flame domain and escape the pursuit of the dragon-subduing general. However, this ultimate skill was a forbidden divine art and one of her strongest life-saving trump cards. Unless it was absolutely necessary, she couldn't use it easily. Once she used it, her vitality would be greatly damaged and she would enter a weak state. She would need to recuperate for at least a few months to recover to her peak state. The reason why Luo Shui decisively used this ultimate skill was that she knew that the dragon-subduing general's strength had reached the 8th level of the martial god realm. No matter how many abilities and methods she had, no matter how hard she fought, it was impossible for her to defeat the dragon-subduing general. If she fought with the dragon-subduing general for a few hours, she would definitely be severely injured and her divine body might even be damaged. Rather than that, she might as well decisively use her ultimate skill and escape while the dragon-subduing general was unprepared. The facts proved that she had succeeded. Moreover, she had only paid a small price. Before entering seclusion to heal her injuries, Luo Shui took out a communication jade slip and sent a message to Ji Tianxing. She told Ji Tianxing about what happened last night and reminded Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao to be careful. He definitely couldn't fight the dragon-subduing general head-on, or he would definitely die. After sending out the communication jade slip, she stepped onto the divine altar and began to recuperate in seclusion. Meanwhile, in the 72 cities region, in a mountain range outside Kaoshan City, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were hiding in one of the mountain peaks, silently meditating and adjusting their breathing. At this moment, a ray of light flew over from the horizon, entered the mountain, and landed in front of Ji Tianxing. After the spiritual light dissipated, a communication jade slip was revealed. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were alarmed by the aura of the jade slip and temporarily ended their cultivation. The two of them opened their eyes and glanced at the imprint on the jade slip, knowing that it was sent by Luo Shui. Ji Tianxing picked up the jade strip and released his spiritual consciousness to read the information inside. After a while, he finished reading the information in the jade strip and immediately frowned, his expression turning grave. Yin Yao had a bad premonition and asked with concern, "Tianxing, what did the Divine Master say? Did something happen?" Ji Tianxing nodded and put away the communication jade slip. He said in a heavy tone, "Last night, Luo Shui was attacked by the dragon-subduing general. The dragon-subduing general is the leader of the heaven-punishing tribe's fleet. He has a ferocious appearance and is extremely powerful. He has reached LV8 martial god realm. Luo Shui was not his match. After exchanging a few blows with him, Luo Shui decisively used his secret skill to escape. Now that Luo Shui's vitality is greatly damaged, he has already fled back to the Luo Shui Divine Kingdom to recuperate. Luo Shui reminded us to be careful and not to be found by the dragon subduing general. More importantly, we cannot fight him head-on, or we will definitely die. Yin Yao was also shocked when she heard the news. She revealed a worried expression. The dragon subduing general who leads the heaven-punishing tribe's army has reached LV8 martial god realm. Even the divine master is not his match. If that's the case, doesn't that mean that the dragon subduing general is the strongest person on the continent, and no one can defeat him? Ji Tianxing nodded with a grave expression and said in a low voice, "Based on the current situation, this person is indeed invincible on the Shenwu continent. We definitely cannot be found by him. Otherwise, it will really be like what Luo Shui said." Yin Yao frowned and said worriedly, "Do we have to stop our operation and escape from the 72 cities? But if we don't create chaos, the heaven-punishing tribe's army will attack Tianju Mountain." Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and then said firmly, "Of course, we cannot escape. We have to seize the initiative and restrain the heaven-punishing tribe's powerhouses. Once we leave the 72 cities, Tianju Mountain will definitely not be able to stop the heaven-punishing tribe's army. However, we have to be extra careful and vigilant. Every time we attack, we have to end the battle quickly and try to stay as far away as possible. Only then can we avoid the greatest danger." Yin Yao thought for a moment and then nodded. "All right, then we'll hold on for a few more days. If the dragon subduing general really finds us, the situation will be too dangerous. We still have the Jiuqian 10 Absolutes Tower as our trump card, so we should be able to escape successfully." The two of them made up their minds and then quietly left the mountain peak to begin their operation. An hour later, the two of them silently infiltrated Kaoshan City. With the help of the god-slaying flying dagger and the shadowless dual swords, the two of them quickly killed 20 heaven-punishing tribe warriors. After succeeding in their attack, the two of them quickly left Kaoshan City and rushed over to Qingba City, which was 50,000 kilometers away. Before dawn, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao infiltrated Qingba City and assassinated more than 10 black-armored warriors. The entire process was very secretive and did not alarm the city's citizens. It was only after dawn that the people from the city Lord's Manor realized that the situation was not good. By this time, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had already escaped far away. The two of them continued to fly northwest. 12 hours later, the two of them had flown 200,000 kilometers and arrived at the northwest region of the 72 cities. After some planning and discussion, the two of them attacked 2 more cities at night and assassinated more than 30 black-armored warriors. Among them, there was even an LV2 martial god realm captain who was killed by the two of them. After the assassination, the two of them left the northwest region at night as if they did not know what fatigue was. 2 days later, the two of them appeared in the northern region of the 72 cities and quietly attacked one of the cities. Without a doubt, more than 20 heaven-punishing tribe warriors were killed by the god-slaying flying dagger and the shadowless swords. The two of them appeared and disappeared mysteriously, constantly changing their targets and locations. Their whereabouts also became uncertain. Unknowingly, 7 days passed. The captains and heaven-punishing tribe warriors guarding the 72 cities were already in a state of panic and were filled with worry. And Yu and the dragon subduing general were extremely furious. They swore to find the two of them and tear them into pieces. However, their whereabouts were too mysterious. Even the dragon subduing general would not be able to catch them in a short period of time. Chapter 2382. For the next 2 weeks, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had been on the move. The two of them appeared and disappeared mysteriously in the 72 cities, assassinating batch after batch of Heaven Punisher warriors. The two of them kept changing their positions. Sometimes they were in the eastern region, sometimes they were in the southern region. In less than 2 days, they were in the northern region. Their erratic movements made the Heaven Punisher warriors dizzy. They could not keep up with them at all, especially in Yu. He had personally led more than a dozen captains to chase after Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. He was already exhausted. As the leader of the fleet, General Dragon Subduing could not be led by Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao like in you. He had been in Sky-Reaching City for a long time and was in charge of the 72 cities. In the past 2 weeks, he had received news from various places and analyzed the truth. He had already guessed that the culprit who had been assassinating the Heaven Punisher warriors and creating chaos was Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing's goal was to restrain the Heaven Punisher army so that they would not have time to attack Sky Pillar Mountain. In General Dragon's subduing size, this was just a small trick to stall for time. He quickly came up with a plan and decisively gave the order. Out of the 50 captains of the Heaven Punisher clan, 14 had been assassinated. Of the remaining 36 captains, 4 remained in the North Underworld Mountains headquarters. The number of people the dragon subduing general could mobilize was only 32 captains. Thus, he ordered Yu to lead 11 captains and rush to Sky Pillar Mountain. They had to occupy Sky Pillar Mountain as soon as possible and seize Ji Tianxing's base. The other 20 captains formed teams of 5 to kill Ji Tianxing and his wife in the 72 cities. Since there were many Heaven Punisher warriors, they could kill Ji Tianxing and attack Sky Pillar Mountain at the same time. General Dragon Subduing believed that this move would definitely put Ji Tianxing in a desperate situation and destroy all his fantasies. At noon on this day, in the southern region of the 72 cities, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were riding on the glazed fire dragon, flying high up in the sky. They were rushing towards Snow Ridge City as fast as lightning. Yesterday morning, they had attacked a city in the eastern region and assassinated more than 10 Heaven Punisher warriors. Now, they had appeared in the southern region and were about to sneak into Snow Ridge City. During the flight, Ji Tianxing had a pensive look on his face, his brows furrowed tightly. Seeing his strange look, Yun Yao asked with concern, "Tianxing, what are you thinking about? Still worried about the Pillar of Heaven's mountains?" Ji Tianxing nodded and sent a voice transmission to explain, "Although our plan is progressing smoothly, and we've assassinated 2 captains and hundreds of Heaven Punisher warriors in the past month, it's still not enough. But I keep feeling that something is wrong. The dragon subduing general's strength and methods are so strong. How can he allow us to create chaos? Ever since Luo Shui reminded us, General Dragon Subduing hasn't appeared. Don't you find it strange?" Yin Yao nodded in agreement and said in a low voice, "It is indeed strange. Moreover, previously, we were able to meet captains who were alone. Now, we haven't met any captains. No matter which city it is, there are only Martial Sage Realm black-armored warriors left. I suspect that the captains have gathered together and are hiding somewhere to ambush us." Ji Tianxing continued, "I've been thinking for the past few days. Although our plan seems to be successful, there's actually a huge loophole." "What loophole?" Yin Yao looked at him in confusion. His expression was grave as he said, "We neglected one point. There are many martial gods in the Heaven Punisher tribe. They can act separately. One group of captains will surround us, while the other group will attack the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. They can definitely do it." Yin Yao's gaze turned cold as worry flashed across her eyes. "Do you mean that General Dragon Subduing might have already sent people to attack the Pillar of Heaven's mountains? If that's the case, quickly send a message to Huang Long and ask him to bring the disciples and escape." Ji Tianxing shook his head and said, "I've already told Huang Long a long time ago. If the Heaven Punisher tribe wants to invade the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, we won't be able to defend it no matter what. I've already instructed him to gather the resources and power of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and prepare for the final battle. Back then, I've left some backup plans in the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Even if the Heaven Punisher tribe attacks, it will be able to hold on for some time. Even if we lose the battle, we won't let the Heaven Punisher tribe win so easily. They will have to pay a heavy price." Yin Yao nodded to show that she understood. She then asked worriedly, "What about Huang Long and the disciples? Can they escape?" "Of course not," Ji Tianxing said confidently. Yin Yao was relieved. She rode the glazed fire dragon and continued on her way. However, At that moment, a few streaks of crimson light suddenly appeared in the blue sky, 300 miles away. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The streaks of crimson light streaked across the sky like lightning and approached them at an extremely fast speed. When Ji Tianxing saw the crimson light and sensed the unique aura of the Heaven Punisher tribe, he frowned and a cold, killing intent surged out his eyes. It's the martial gods of the Heaven Punisher tribe. Be careful. Actually, there was no need for him to remind her. Yin Yao had also seen the situation clearly. She stared coldly in front of her. She held the shadowless sword with both hands and asked through voice transmission, "Should we run or fight?" Ji Tianxing also took out the Burial of Heaven sword and said in a low voice, "Kill." When she heard the cold words, Yin Yao put away the glazed fire dragon without hesitation. She held the gold and silver swords in her hands and stood in the sky, ready to fight. In the blink of an eye, the streaks of crimson light arrived and stopped 10 miles away from the duo. Swoosh! When the crimson light faded, 5 burly figures appeared. They were the 5 elites of the Heaven Punisher tribe. All of them were wearing silver armor and exuded a strong, killing intent. There was no doubt that they were the 5 captains. The captain of a Yunming ship, who was leading the group, stared at Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao with burning eyes. He grinned smugly. "Ha! Ji Tianxing, I've been looking for you for a long time. I've finally caught you today." Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows. A cold light flashed in his eyes. He said in a low voice, "It seems that General Long Fu has already guessed that I'm the one who created the chaos." The captain of the Yunming ship was stunned. Then, he threw his head back and laughed. "Ha ha! Of course. General Long Fu is a wise and powerful man. You've been scheming in my territory and creating chaos, but he has already seen through everything. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. Deputy General, and you has already led his fleet to Tianju Mountain. In the eyes of the dragon's subduing general, your little tricks are not worth mentioning at all." When they heard the news, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao's expressions changed. Anger and killing intent radiated from their bodies. Ji Tianxing's conjecture was indeed verified. Seeing their reactions, the captain sneered. Yin Ming sneered mockingly. "Ji Tianxing, you must be very angry and worried right now, right? Unfortunately, you can't even save yourselves. You're about to die." Chapter 2383. Yin Ming looked very smug. While he was talking, the 4 captains drew their swords and surrounded Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. Ji Tianxing's face was extremely cold. He stared at Yun Ming and shouted, "You deserve to die." Then, a strong murderous intent burst out from his body, and he attacked. Sky-sealing sword array. He made a spell with his left hand and pointed the Burial of Heaven sword at the sky with his right hand. Suddenly, thousands of stars lit up in the sky and fell like a meteor shower. The world within 1,000 miles was suddenly covered by the stars and became bright and dazzling. An indomitable and domineering sword intent filled every corner of the world. This was one of Ji Tianxing's unique sword Dao techniques. It was a genuine divine art. Yun Ming and the 4 captains were startled. Their eyes flickered with astonishment. They had heard of Ji Tianxing's reputation and deeds and knew that he was known as the 4th most powerful person in the continent. But in their eyes, he was just a martial sage. No matter how powerful he was, there was a limit to his power. Now, when they fought Ji Tianxing with their own hands, they knew that the 4th most powerful person was indeed terrifying. Yun Ming and the 4 captains took the opportunity to attack Ji Tianxing before the tens of thousands of starry swords fell. Bloody light filled the sky and attacked Ji Tianxing. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Hundreds of sharp swords poured down like a flood and were about to drown Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing was fearless. His body emitted a golden light, and he used the heavenly dragon body. He instantly turned into a 10 feet tall god of war, and his combat power increased by more than 6 times. Star-breaking fist. Moon-breaking sword. He used both his fists and swords, throwing out fist shadows that covered the sky and slashing out a giant sword that could split the world. Yin Yao also used all her strength and waved her shadowless dual swords and slashed out 99 starry sword auras. Bang, 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 bang. Suddenly, the swords clashed and created a loud sound that shook the sky and spread for thousands of miles. A destructive shockwave wrapped in billions of light fragments swept out in all directions like a five-colored flood. The surrounding mountains, rivers, and forests were immediately pulverized and flattened by the shockwave. The area within a radius of 1,000 miles was turned into ruins on the spot, and all living beings were exterminated. In the first round of confrontation, both sides were evenly matched. Neither side was able to gain the upper hand. However, before the five captains could attack again, the star sword that blotted out the sky descended. Swish! Swish! In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of stellar swords had sealed off an area of 1,000 miles. A super sword formation with dazzling starlight and crisscrossing sword chi was thus formed. Each of the starry swords was thousands of feet long and contained extremely sharp and destructive power. Inside the sword formation, the starlight was so dense that even the air had turned silvery white. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao's strength instantly increased threefold. Their magic power was also limitless. However, Yun Ming and the four captains didn't cultivate star power, so they wouldn't receive any benefits. On the contrary, the heaven-sealing sword formation brought about a terrifying suppressive force, as if heaven and earth were collapsing. The five captains seemed to be gripped by an invisible hand. Their bodies kept trembling, and their speed and strength were weakened. With just a thought from Ji Tianxing, thousands of stellar swords violently blasted towards the five captains. Boom! 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 In the earth-shattering noise, the five captains were drowned by the stellar swords. Although they were very strong and dodged most of the stellar swords, they still had hundreds of stellar swords. However, each of them still endured over 100 swords and were sent flying wildly by the starry greatsword, emitting waves of miserable shrieks. The five captains were blasted into pieces and scattered all over the sword formation. The formation that they had deliberately maintained was also broken and scattered. The silver armor that they were wearing was also blasted with dozens of dents and deformed. Even though they only suffered minor injuries, they looked very miserable. Their morale had suffered a heavy blow. The only thing that comforted them was that they had defeated more than 2,000 stellar swords. However, what happened next made their expressions even uglier. The starlight fragments that were flying all over the sky quickly returned to the heaven-sealing sword formation. In the blink of an eye, more than 2,000 stellar swords were formed and blasted towards them in an even more violent manner. There was no doubt that the star power in the heaven-sealing sword formation would not dissipate. It could be said to be an endless cycle. Yin Ming was shocked and angry. He quickly roared, "Ignore those broken swords. Let's join forces to kill Ji Tianxing. This sword formation will naturally collapse." As he spoke, he waved his long saber without any regard for his own safety. He shattered dozens of stellar swords and rushed towards Ji Tianxing bravely. The other four captains followed closely behind. They shattered countless stellar swords along the way and went straight for Ji Tianxing. They only had Ji Tianxing in their eyes, but they ignored the seemingly delicate Yun Yao. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yun Yao's figure flashed and teleported hundreds of miles away. She appeared in the midst of the stellar swords behind Captain. Meteor Fall. She held the shadowless sword with both hands and unleashed her strongest power. She slashed the captain at the fastest speed. Bam! Bam! In the next moment, the captain's four legs were cut off by the shadowless sword. Blood splattered all over the sky. In excruciating pain, the captain raised his head and let out a miserable howl. He quickly turned his head to look at Yun Yao. His eyes were blazing with blood, and his entire body was bursting with murderous intent. "Bitch, you're courting death." He roared furiously and waved his long saber recklessly towards Yun Yao. Yun Yao retreated without hesitation. Her figure flashed and disappeared in the stellar swords. At the same time, Ji Tianxing flicked his left hand and threw out the god-killing flying dagger. Swoosh! A ray of golden light bloomed and flashed in the sword formation. A quarter of an instant later, the golden light hit the furious captain and blasted a huge bloody hole in his chest. Countless pieces of scale armor burst out. The captain, who had lost his 4 legs, immediately lost his vitality and died on the spot. Yun Ming and the other 3 captains witnessed their companion being killed with their own eyes. They were so angry that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They rushed towards Ji Tianxing even more crazily. However, the endless starry swords were like a never-ending rain of arrows that continued to bombard them. They were beaten back and could not get close to Ji Tianxing. No matter how many stellar swords they destroyed, the starlight fragments would reform into swords again. If they wanted to truly defeat all the sword lights, they had to crack and destroy the heaven-sealing sword formation. However, with the strength and experience of Yun Ming and the other 3 captains, it was absolutely impossible. Boom, 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 boom. Tens of thousands of stellar swords kept stabbing the 4 captains, creating deafening noises. Ji Tianxing hid in the stellar swords. He controlled the god-killing flying dagger with his divine telekinesis and began to attack the 4 captains. Swoosh! Golden light flashed. A captain's left arm was pierced by the flying dagger. His entire arm was blown to pieces. Swoosh! A ray of golden light bloomed. The god-killing flying dagger attacked Yun Ming's chest. At the critical moment, Yun Ming dodged to the side and escaped with his life. However, the god-killing flying dagger still hit his left shoulder, leaving a horrifying bloody hole. As time passed, the 4 captains' strength rapidly weakened, and their injuries became more and more serious. Chapter 2384. Not long after, another captain's chest was pierced by the god-slaying flying dagger. The dark red scales collapsed, and the golden patterns were broken. This person died on the spot. There were only 3 captains left, and they were still putting up a desperate struggle. They resisted the attacks of the heaven-sealing sword formation while guarding against Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao's attacks. However, they could not break the heaven-sealing sword formation, so they were doomed to die. Thousands of starry giant swords kept attacking, making them tired and unable to fight back. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were hiding in the dark, glaring like tigers watching their prey, constantly releasing fatal attacks. Yun Ming and the other 2 captains were getting more and more injured, and they were getting weaker and weaker. 15 minutes later, Yun Yao took the opportunity to kill another captain with her shadowless dual swords. Only Yun Ming and the last captain were left. They were both heavily injured and stained with blood. The 2 of them were filled with fear and despair. They finally understood how terrifying Ji Tianxing, who was known as the 4th most powerful person, was. Their fighting spirit was completely gone, and they were on the verge of breaking down. They resisted the attacks of the starry giant swords while looking for a way to break the formation. They only wanted to break the heaven-sealing sword formation and leave this place as soon as possible. Whoever can kill Ji Tianxing, go ahead and kill him. They did not have the ability anyway, so they gave up on the idea. However, they tried for a long time, but could not find a way to break the formation. Ji Tianxing took the opportunity to pierce Yun Ming's heart with the god-slaying flying dagger. Boom! There was a muffled sound, and blood splattered everywhere. Yun Ming was killed instantly. His wounded body fell from the sky and smashed into the ruins below. The captain, who was lucky enough to survive, had a mental breakdown. He knew that he was going to die, so he stopped resisting and wanted to self-destruct on the spot. Given the nature of the Heaven Punishers, they would never surrender or admit defeat. Even if he died, he would drag Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao down with him. However, in Ji Tianxing's heaven-sealing sword formation, his life was no longer in his control. Swish! Ji Tianxing decisively threw out his god-slaying flying knife and stabbed towards the captain's chest. Yun Yao also brandished her shadowless dual swords and attacked this person. Boom! In the end, the god-slaying flying knife was faster and pierced through the captain's chest. Furthermore, a power capable of destroying heaven and earth burst forth from that man's chest. A world-shaking explosion was heard. Boom! In an instant, the captain's body was blasted into smithereens, his flesh and blood scattered in the sword formation. The 5 captains in the martial god realm were killed just like that. This was the first time that Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had fought so many martial gods since they had obtained the divine weapon. Reality proved that the combat strength of these 2 people had indeed reached a shocking level. To be able to kill 5 captains in a 2 versus 5 situation was definitely a horrifying anecdote. However, their expressions were still solemn, and they were not happy at all. Shua! Without hesitation, Ji Tianxing immediately put away the heaven-sealing sword formation. Yin Yao also summoned the glazed fire dragon and left the battlefield with Ji Tianxing. They rushed to the south as fast as they could. After all, both of them were worried about the safety of Tianzhu Mountain. The night sky was as dark as ink. The biting cold wind whistled and blew across Tianzhu Mountain. Tianzhu Mountain was not as peaceful as usual tonight. Although it was late at night, the thousands of disciples did not rest or cultivate. In the early evening, the Huanglong Taoist had ordered everyone to gather and prepare to fight against the invasion of the foreign tribe. It was said that the Huanglong Taoist had received a message from Ji Tianxing that a powerful fleet of the heaven-destroying tribe was about to attack Tianzhu Mountain. After receiving the order, everyone put down everything and gathered at the dojo and the edge of the protective formation. Under the command of the elders and many deacons, everyone performed their duties. Most of the disciples gathered at the dojo and worked together to increase the power of the sky dome formation. A small number of disciples stood guard at the edge of the mountain and controlled the auxiliary formation to protect Tianzhu Mountain. As for the Huanglong Taoist and a few elders, they entered the Star Divine Cauldron underground to control the operation of the Star Divine formation. Even though it was late at night and the cold wind whistled, it could not extinguish everyone's passion and fighting spirit. Even though everyone's hearts were heavy, everyone knew that Tianzhu Mountain would not be able to stop the attack of the heaven-destroying tribe's fleet. However, no one would be afraid or retreat. Even if they died on the battlefield, they would make the heaven-destroying tribe pay a heavy price. Not long after, a dense spiritual light lit up the night sky. Shua! The spiritual light streaked across the night sky and disappeared into the mountain. Soon, the Huanglong Taoist, who was controlling the formation in the Star Divine Cauldron, reached out and grabbed the spiritual light. It was a communication jade slip sent by a scout at the front line. The Huanglong Taoist released his divine consciousness and entered the jade slip to read the information inside. When he finished reading the contents of a jade slip, he immediately frowned, and his expression became extremely grave. The surrounding elders hurriedly asked when they saw the strange expression on his face. "Great Immortal, what happened? Is this news from the scouts at the front line? Could it be related to the heaven-destroying tribe's fleet?" The Huanglong Taoist did not hide it. He put away the communication jade slip and said with a grave expression, "The scouts at the front lines sent news that the heaven-destroying tribe's fleet has already entered Tianzhu Mountain's territory and is killing in the northern cities. Since noon today, more than 30 cities have been destroyed and millions of civilians have been killed. The 9 sects and 18 factions have also suffered devastating attacks. 7 sects have already been destroyed. Even the Battle Dragon sect has been destroyed. Tang Zhanlong was killed on the battlefield by a few heaven-destroying tribe soldiers. Tang Zhanlong was the sect leader of the Battle Dragon sect. Back then, he had surrendered to Ji Tianxing and had always been loyal to Tianzhu Mountain. When the heaven-destroying tribe's fleet invaded this time, Tang Zhanlong had led all the disciples of the Battle Dragon sect to resist with all his might. In the end, the Battle Dragon sect had been completely annihilated by the heaven-destroying tribe's fleet. The elders' expressions changed, and they were filled with indignation. How can this be? Even Tang Zhanlong was killed by the heaven-destroying tribe? Tang Zhanlong was a true martial sage. Even he was killed. How can we resist the heaven-destroying tribe's attack? The heaven-destroying tribe's fleet has destroyed many sects and cities along the way. They are simply unstoppable. We have no chance of winning. We can only do our best to stall for time and hope that young Master G can rush back soon. It's not that I'm disrespectful to young Master G, but based on the current situation, even if young Master G rushes back, I'm afraid he won't be able to turn the tide. That's right. The heaven-destroying tribe's fleet has many martial gods and countless martial sages. Even if young Master G has 3 heads and 6 arms, he won't be able to defeat them. The elders discussed with each other through voice transmission. Their voices were low, and they were in low spirits. A trace of despair lingered in everyone's hearts. Everyone knew that Tianju Mountain would not be able to escape this time. Chapter 2385. Waiting was the most torturous thing, especially when there was no hope in waiting. Time seemed to pass very slowly. For hours later, just before dawn, it was the darkest moment of the day. However, at that moment, a blinding blood-red light appeared in the northern night sky. Swoosh! The blood-red light, which was more than a dozen miles long and looked like a sharp blade, streaked across the night sky like lightning and headed toward the pillar of heaven's mountains. In just 10 seconds, the blinding blood-red light arrived and stopped in the sky above the pillar of heaven's mountains. After the blood-red light faded, 12 pitch-black battleships that were thousands of feet long appeared and lined up in the night sky. A cold, murderous aura descended from the sky and enveloped an area of 1,000 miles. Seeing this, the disciples of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains, who were on high alert, immediately sent out the signal of an enemy attack and rang the bell. Instantly, the thousands of disciples were on high alert and on high alert. The deacons also gave orders for the disciples to use their dermic powers and activate the protective array to its maximum. Swoosh! The 5-colored light shield within a radius of 200 miles suddenly emitted a dazzling light and an earth-shattering aura. The night sky around the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains was instantly illuminated. Everyone looked up at the sky and glared at the battleships coldly and angrily. Crack! 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 The leading battleship opened its heavy door. A Heaven Punisher in golden armor stepped out of the door and came to the bow of the battleship. He was Deputy General in you, and there were 4 black armor guard behind him. Then you placed his hand on the sword at his waist and looked down at the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. Seeing that everyone on the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains was on high alert, as if they were facing a great enemy, he immediately revealed a mocking sneer. Hee hee! Worms of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains, listen up. The Heaven Punisher's fleet is here. Tonight is the day you die. Don't put up any unnecessary resistance. Quickly kneeling down and surrendering is the wisest choice. He spoke in the human language. His voice was loud and clear, and was as deep as thunder. The disciples of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains were all riled up, and their fighting spirits soared. And you saw that no one answered, and no one surrendered. So he continued, Reptiles, are you still hoping that Ji Tianxing can rush back to save you? Don't even think about it. Ji Tianxing is besieged by the experts of my clan, and his life is hanging by a thread. If you dare to resist, I'll send you all to accompany him in death. Hearing his words, the expressions of many disciples at the peak of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains became increasingly indignant. Everyone clenched their teeth, and their eyes became even more resolute. For a long time, and you had fought with Ji Tianxing many times and was defeated time and time again. He was even heavily injured and had to recuperate for a long time before he recovered. His heart was filled with hatred and anger, but he had nowhere to vent it. Now, he was personally leading a fleet to attack the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. It could be said that victory was within his grasp. The thrill of his revenge filled him with pride. Therefore, he was not in a hurry to destroy the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. Instead, he enjoyed everyone's helpless and hopeless reactions. At the same time, the doors of the other battleships opened. A few captains in silver armor walked to the front of the battleships and looked down at the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. One of them became impatient and sent a voice transmission to Yu, Deputy General in Ji Tianxing is not here. Why do you have to talk nonsense with these ants? And you glanced at that captain and sneered. Ha! You only know how to charge and break through enemy lines. How can you understand the feeling of having the pearl of wisdom in your hands and the feeling of a cat toying with a mouse? I like to see those reptiles' expressions of hatred and helplessness. First, break their willpower, then let them die in despair. That is the best way to take revenge. The other captains chimed in with a smug smile on their faces. The captain who was reprimanded did not say anything else and turned to return to the battleship. And you did not forget General Long Fu's instructions. He did not waste any more time and hurriedly gave the order to attack. Soldiers, flatten the pillar of heaven's mountains and destroy this sacred land of martial arts. Kill. Leave no one alive. As his voice fell, the 11 battleships lit up with dark red light and emitted a destructive aura. Ka. Hundreds of black cannon muzzles appeared on the two sides of each battleship. These battleships adjusted their direction and aimed at the pillar of heaven's mountains. In the next moment, thousands of dark red light beams shot out from the numerous cannon muzzles and blasted toward the peak of the pillar of heaven's mountains. Boom, 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 boom. The earth-shattering dark red light pillars slammed into the five-colored light barrier, causing a series of earth-shattering noises to erupt. At that moment, the heavenly dome array within a radius of 200 miles suffered a destructive blow. The thick and sturdy light shield was smashed into pieces on the spot, and hundreds of cracks and holes appeared. A powerful blood-red light beam blasted through the five-colored shield and hit the buildings on the peak of the mountain. Suddenly, more than 10 buildings and palaces were blasted into dust. Not even the broken walls were left. A huge pit appeared on the ground. The entire pillar of heaven's mountains shook violently. Countless cracks appeared on the mountain, and countless rocks and soil collapsed. The 11 battleships shot at the same time and blasted the heavenly dome array. This quasi-god-level protective mountain array could not even withstand a single blow. After the five-color light shield was shattered, the hundreds of disciples gathered on the dojo all suffered a backlash. Everyone's body shook violently. Blood spurted out of their orifices, and they screamed in pain. There were even many disciples with weaker strength who fainted from the shock. And you looked down at the peak of the mountain. When he saw a large number of his disciples collapsed, he sneered. He, weak ants. Only now do you know fear and despair? It's too late. Even if you kneel down and beg for mercy now, I will not let any of you live. You are Ji Tianxing's disciples. You should die 10 times, 100 times. And you sneered proudly. His face was twisted with malevolence. The disciples on the peak of the pillar of heaven's mountains were filled with anger. They roared unyieldingly. Ugly demons, you will get your retribution one day. We can be defeated and killed, but we will never be defeated. The pillar of heaven's mountains will never surrender. Even if we are smashed into pieces, we will not regret it. It is the greatest honor to be a disciple of the pillar of heaven's mountains. Bastards of the heaven punishers. One day, the Kenshin will avenge us. Hoarse, angry, and high-pitched roars resounded in the night sky. Between heaven and earth, there was a thick layer of blood. The atmosphere became solemn, and you laughed even more savagely. He waved his hand again and gave the order to attack. The 11 battleships behind him released thousands of blood-red light beams toward the pillar of heaven's mountains. This time, the pillar of heaven's mountains lost the protection of the heavenly dome array and was about to be blasted into pieces. Chapter 2386. The blood-red light pillars were about to engulf the pillar of heaven's mountain. At this moment, an endless amount of star divine power gushed out from the depths of the ground. It turned out that the Huanglong Taoist and a few elders had used all their strength to activate the Star Divine Cauldron. Swoosh! Vast and boundless star power poured into the firmament grand array, immediately forming a silver light barrier that covered the sky and covered the sun. The silver light shield within a radius of 200 miles was as dazzling as the bright moon. Boom! 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 Thousands of blood-red light pillars hit the silver light barrier and made deafening noises. The blood-red light pillars and the silver light barrier collapsed at the same time. Billions of blood-red and silver shards burst out in all directions, sprinkling thousands of miles into the night sky. The entire area was illuminated brilliantly. It was as bright as day. Fortunately, the Sky Dome array blocked the bombardment of the 11 battleships. But unfortunately, hundreds of disciples were shaken to the point where they vomited blood and fainted on the ground. The spacious dojo was littered with corpses. Only a dozen deacons and more than 20 elite disciples were left, and they were still able to hold on. On the jade-paved ground, there were dark red bloodstains everywhere. It was a ghastly sight. Such a tragic scene made the solemn and stirring atmosphere between heaven and earth even more intense. The deacons and disciples who were still conscious were filled with despair and helplessness. In the night sky, and you sneered again. Ha ha! As expected of the pillar of heaven's mountain. It can actually block the second salvo of the battleships. It looks like Ji Tianxing put in a lot of effort to set up many defenses. However, I would like to see how long you worms can last. As he spoke, he waved his hand again and gave the order to attack. The cannons of the 11 battleships lit up with blood-red light again. The destructive power was accumulating and would destroy the entire pillar of heaven's mountain in the next moment. The deacons and disciples on the dojo were in complete despair. Many of them closed their eyes and calmly welcomed death. Deep underground, the Huanglong Taoists and a few elders were so angry that their eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. They roared madly. Bastards of the Heaven Punisher clan, I'll fight them to the death. I vow to live or die with the pillar of heaven's mountains. Huanglong Taoist quickly shouted, Everyone, don't be rash. Don't forget Shizuan's plan. Other than the Star Divine Furnace, we also have the Heavenly Dipper Array and the Earthly Fiend Array. Even if the pillar of heaven's mountains is destroyed, we will make the Heaven Punisher race pay the price. As he spoke, his entire body emitted a torrential amount of mana. His yellow robe danced in the wind. His hands formed a mysterious hand seal, forming 19 hand seals in the blink of an eye, activating the endless star fire. The other elders also suppressed their anger and hurriedly used their spells to help him control the array. Instantly, the Heavenly Dipper Starnet Grand Formation and Earth Fiend Spirit Invoking Grand Formation were activated. These two mysterious formations were connected to 108 mountains, gathering the power of heaven and earth within a few million miles. Ever since the two great formations were restored, they had never been truly used. This time, the Huanglong Taoist followed Ji Tianxing's instructions and used the power of heaven and earth from the 108 mountains to unleash the most powerful counterattack. The terrifying power of heaven and earth instantly gathered in the divine star cauldron, enveloped in endless star fire, and blasted into the sky. Boom! A 5-colored beam of light about 5 miles wide shot out of the peak of the pillar of heaven's mountains in the most violent manner. It released the most dazzling light in the night sky and the most terrifying power. Boom! Crack! The 5-colored beam of light clashed with the blood-red light in the sky, creating a thunderous explosion that reverberated throughout the universe. Thousands of blood-red light beams were shattered on the spot. Billions of pieces of blood-red light scattered in all directions, illuminating the night sky within a 10,000-mile radius and dispelling the endless darkness. A destructive shockwave spread out in all directions with the pillar of heaven's mountains as the center. As a result, all the mountains within a 5,000-mile radius were flattened to the ground. The mountains and rivers were turned into ruins, and the ground was filled with deep ditches and pits that shook violently for a long time. It was as if the end of the world had arrived and the world had collapsed. Of course, the 12 battleships in the sky were not spared either. All of them were blasted away by the terrifying 5-colored beam of light. Swish, 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 swish. Including in Yu's flagship, the 12 battleships were blasted into pieces and fell into the ruins a few hundred miles away. And Yu was not prepared at all. He did not expect the ants of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains to be able to unleash such terrifying power. When the five-colored beam of light struck, he was standing at the front of the battleship and could not dodge in time. Naturally, he was also blasted by the five-colored beam of light. His golden armor was shattered, and all four of his legs were shattered. His entire body was covered in wounds and blood. His internal organs were also shattered, and blood kept flowing out from his nose and mouth. His divine power aura became chaotic. He was severely injured, and his consciousness was blurry as he flew a few hundred miles before he fell into the ruins and was buried by the dust. After a long time, he struggled to climb out and returned to the battleship with a gray face. The four black armor guards behind him were also blasted by the five-colored beam of light and turned into ashes on the spot. On the other 11 battleships, a few captains were standing outside. They were severely injured and unconscious. Even many of the black-armored warriors in the battleships were injured. In an instant, the heaven-punishing warriors lost their spirit, and the formation of the battleships was also disrupted. This unexpected heavy blow caught everyone off guard. They could not believe it. Fortunately, the battleships were all genuine divine artifacts and had strong defenses. Otherwise, the five-colored beam of light would have destroyed these battleships. Even the heaven-punishing warriors in the battleships would be annihilated. Everyone panicked. It took them a long time to regain their footing. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. One battleship after another flew out of the ruins and gathered in the sky. At the same time, the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, which was hundreds of thousands of feet tall, started to slowly tilt and collapse. After all, the Sky Dome Formation had been destroyed, and the Heaven Spirit Formation and Earth-Killing Formation's power had been exhausted. Without the formation's protection, the entire mountain could no longer hold on. It could only turn into rubble and ruins. However, the collapse of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains was also within the Huanglong Taoists' expectations. The many deacons and elite disciples in the training hall were also mentally prepared. They quickly used their techniques to capture the unconscious disciples on the ground and put them into a special Dharma treasure. In just a few breaths, thousands of disciples had been rescued. The deacons and elite disciples quickly burrowed underground and met up with the elders. The Huanglong Taoist was also ready. He immediately activated a mysterious teleportation formation. Swoosh! A dazzling white light vortex appeared underground. The deacons and elite disciples stepped into the vortex without hesitation. Immediately after, several elders also jumped into the white light vortex and disappeared. The Huanglong Taoist was at the back. He glanced coldly at the battleships in the night sky and left behind a sentence filled with hatred and murderous intent. The Pillar of Heaven's mountains will remember what happened today. Chapter 2387. As Huanglong Taoist spoke, the white light vortex swallowed him as well. Swoosh! With a flash of light, the white light vortex also collapsed and dissipated. The Pillar of Heaven's mountain, which had once been known as the Holy Land of Martial Arts, quickly collapsed. The 10,000 zhang tall mountain no longer existed. It turned into endless dust and crushed stones, forming a huge pile of ruins. Among the ruins, some red bricks and green tiles could be vaguely seen. There were also broken Kenshin statues. The smoke and dust that covered the sky raged in the sky for an hour before dissipating. The sky brightened. A new day had arrived, but the Pillar of Heaven's mountain had become history. The 12 battleships lined up in the sky. The captains looked down at the ruins with ugly expressions. Even though they had won, they were not happy at all. Especially in you. His expression was even more ferocious, and his heart was filled with anger and murderous intent. He forced himself to stand at the bow of the battleship and look down. He muttered coldly, "That damned Ji Tianxing." As expected of the Kenshin reincarnation, he had already predicted today's calamity. Even though he was not at the Pillar of Heaven's mountain, he still left behind such a powerful backup plan. General Long ordered me to attack the Pillar of Heaven's mountain and take it for myself. He was also interested in the legend of the Kenshin and wanted to study the secrets of the Pillar of Heaven's mountain. However, the pillar of heaven's mountain collapsed and turned into ruins. General Long had ordered you to take over the pillar of heaven's mountain. Now, the pillar of heaven's mountain had been completely destroyed and turned into a worthless ruin. General Long's plan had failed. He could not find out about the secrets of the Kenshin. Moreover, and you, the captains, and many of the Heaven Punisher's warriors had also been severely injured. They had paid such a huge price, but did not receive a corresponding reward. How could they be happy? However, what comforted in you was that the pillar of heaven's mountain had become the Heaven Punisher's territory. There were hundreds of cities, villages, and hundreds of millions of people in this area. In the future, these people would be the Heaven Punisher's slaves. And you stood at the bow of the battleship for a moment before he waved his hand and ordered 300 Heaven Punisher's warriors to excavate the pillar of heaven's mountain. He was unwilling to give up. He still wanted to find some clues and loot some items from the ruins. He believed that the people of the pillar of heaven's mountain had fled in a hurry and did not have time to pack their things. The morning sun rose, and golden sunlight shone on the world. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao rode the glazed fire dragon and streaked across the sky like lightning, rushing back to the pillar of heaven's mountains as fast as they could. Both of them were filled with worry for the survival of the pillar of heaven's mountains. Chua! Finally, the glazed fire dragon crossed several mountain ranges and returned to the sky above the pillar of heaven's mountains. The scene that greeted them made Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao tremble. Their expressions changed drastically on the spot, only to see that the towering and majestic giant mountain that was over 10,000 feet tall had already disappeared. All that was left was a pile of rubble. Smoke and dust still filled the air. The once solemn and sacred pillar of heaven's mountain had been destroyed to such an extent. The disciples of the pillar of heaven's mountains were nowhere to be seen. Only 300 black-armored warriors of the Heaven Punishing race were digging through the ruins, carefully searching for something. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing was so angry that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets, and his entire body burst out with a soaring, killing intent. Yin Yao's face also turned cold, and her eyes became as sharp as swords. We're still one step too late. The pillar of heaven's mountains has already been destroyed. Tianxing, didn't you already make arrangements? Huang Long and his disciples must have left long ago. Ji Tianxing nodded and drew the sword of burial of heaven. He said in a chilling tone, "My disciples should be safe. However, these bastards of the Heaven Punishing race have destroyed my 1,000 years of hard work. How can I let them go?" Yin Yao quickly put away the glazed fire dragon and drew her shadowless sword. She looked up at the 12 battleships in the sky and sent a voice transmission. "And you and the other captains are all here. We can't stay here for long. We have to end this quickly." "Understood." Ji Tianxing nodded in response. In a flash, he charged toward the ruins. Sword rain. He stood above the ruins with a cold expression. His left hand formed a seal, and his right hand waved the sword of burial of heaven. He pointed it toward the sky. Instantly, tens of thousands of beams of starlight lit up in the sky and rained down like a meteor shower. A vast aura pressed down from the sky and covered a radius of 1,000 miles. Before the starry sword light arrived, the incomparably sharp sword intent suppressed the entire ruins. At the same time, the 12 battleships in the sky realized that the situation was not good. They all lit up with dazzling blood-red light. Buzz, buzz. As a series of muffled sounds rang out, each battleship formed a blood-red shield to protect itself. There were even a few captains who charged towards Ji Tianxing with sabers and swords in their hands. "It's Ji Tianxing. He's back. Kill him." The general specifically asked for his head. "Only by killing Ji Tianxing can we truly complete our mission. This man killed many of our people. If we don't cut him into pieces, we won't be able to vent our hatred." The captains roared and charged toward Ji Tianxing with murderous intent. However, Ji Tianxing ignored them. He used all his strength to control the 10,000 starlight swords and slammed them into the ruins. The 300 black-armored warriors sensed the danger of death. They immediately fled in panic and screamed in despair. Boom, boom, boom. In the next instant, tens of thousands of giant starlight swords flooded the ruins with destructive power. Every black-armored warrior was hit by at least a dozen giant starlight swords. As deafening explosions rang out, the black-armored warriors were smashed into pieces by the giant starlight swords one after another. The ruins were also reduced to dust by the giant starlight swords, leaving behind a deep crater that was 300 miles wide. Endless smoke and dust covered 1,000 miles and did not dissipate for a long time. More than half of the 300 black-armored warriors were killed by the sword rain. Only about 30 of them were still alive. However, they were not able to escape and were quickly killed by Yun Yao. When the captains and many Heaven Punishers saw the 300 warriors being killed with their own eyes, they were shocked and exclaimed in disbelief. No one had expected Ji Tianxing to be able to use such a destructive killing move. He was like a god descending to the mortal world. After being stunned for a moment, the 6 captains suppressed the shock in their hearts and charged towards Ji Tianxing with murderous intent, launching a besiegement. Ji Tianxing hurriedly used the celestial dragon tyrant body and unleashed his full power to fight with the captains. Even though his swordsmanship was exquisite and unparalleled, he could appear and disappear like a ghost. However, his opponents had the advantage of numbers. They used their powerful strength to continuously neutralize his attacks. After exchanging more than a dozen moves, Ji Tianxing did not gain the upper hand. Instead, he was forced to retreat. Yin Yao was worried about his safety. She quickly rushed over to fight by his side. Chapter 2388. Within a short period of time, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao could still resist and not be defeated. However, Yu quickly sent 4 captains to join the battle. A total of 10 captains in the martial god realm joined forces to besiege Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. The pressure on the couple increased greatly. Ji Tianxing could only unleash his full strength and use the heaven-sealing sword formation. The battle became even more violent. The sword formation enveloped the space within 1,000 miles. The starry giant sword emitted a dazzling cold light. The multicolored light of Dharma power and the dark red divine light covered the sky for thousands of miles. Deafening explosions rang out one after another, spreading over a radius of 10,000 miles. The destructive shock waves spread in all directions and swept across the land within 1,000 miles. The surrounding mountains and forests were razed to the ground and turned into fine sand and dust. Even though Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had used all of their power and their most powerful trump cards, they still couldn't defeat Ji Tianxing. However, they were not martial gods after all. How could they resist the siege of 10 martial gods? The situation had turned into a one-sided slaughter. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao could not withstand the attacks. They were beaten back by the crowd, and their injuries kept worsening. After a short while, the 2 of them were beaten black and blue. Their robes were soaked in blood. The 10 captains, on the other hand, were unscathed or only slightly injured. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had no choice but to retreat and flee toward the south. And you stayed in the flagship and observed the battle from high up in the sky. When he saw that Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were seriously injured and fleeing in a sorry state, he laughed complacently and was in an extremely good mood. Chase after them. Today we must kill Ji Tianxing no matter what. The 10 captains received the order and pursued with all their might. They looked like they would not give up until they killed Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao kept teleporting in the sky. Every time they flashed, they could cross a distance of 300 miles. In just a short while, the 2 of them had fled thousands of kilometers away. At this time, the 10 captains who were chasing after them were also separated. The 2 strongest captains took the lead and chased after them. They were now less than 20 miles away from Ji Tianxing and his wife. The other 8 captains were behind them, dozens of miles away from Ji Tianxing and his wife. The 2 captains in the lead wanted to kill Ji Tianxing too much. They were too impatient. After all, killing Ji Tianxing was a huge contribution and would be heavily rewarded by the dragon's subduing general. The 2 of them unleashed all their strength just to catch up to Ji Tianxing, but forgot to protect themselves. As far as they were concerned, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were like arrows at the end of their flight. Their lives were hanging by a thread, and they posed no threat to them at all. But at this moment, Ji Tianxing, who seemed to be fleeing in panic, suddenly turned around and shot out a ray of golden light. Swish! A streak of golden light streaked across the sky and instantly arrived in front of the captain. The captain was too fast. He had no time to dodge and was hit in the chest by the golden light instantly. Bam! With a muffled sound, the silver armor he was wearing was penetrated. The scales on his chest were shattered and a ball of dazzling golden light burst out. Dozens of scale fragments mixed with flesh and blood splashed in the sky. The captain, who was at LV-3 Martial God Realm, was killed by the god-slaying flying dagger in a moment of carelessness. The other captain saw it with his own eyes. He was so frightened that his body shook. His pupils constricted and he looked horrified. He had never expected that Ji Tianxing, who was seriously injured, would have such a terrifying trump card. He was instantly stunned in the sky. He did not dare to chase after them rashly and assumed a defensive posture. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianxing took out a teleportation talisman and cast a spell to activate the talisman. Bam! The golden talisman burned into ashes. A dazzling white light lit up and enveloped him and Yun Yao. Swoosh! With a flash of white light, the two of them disappeared into thin air and teleported 2,000 miles away. At this time, the captain seemed to have woken up from a dream and his face was full of regret. He released his divine sense to search for the whereabouts of Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao, but it was useless. There was no trace of Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao within a radius of 1,000 miles. Not even a trace of them was left. After a while, the other 8 captains caught up. Everyone looked up at the empty sky and searched around. They were all puzzled. Wasn't Ji Tianxing stopped by you? Where did he go? We saw Ji Tianxing just now. How did he disappear in the blink of an eye? That guy must have used some trump card and escaped. Captain Chiyu, how did you let Ji Tianxing escape from under your nose? Everyone surrounded Captain Chiyu, asking questions all at once. Captain Chiyu's expression was very ugly, and he hurriedly explained, Ji Tianxing still had a trump card killer move. He insta-killed Captain Guang Wu in one move and then teleported away. The other captains did not believe it and raised their doubts one after another. That's impossible. Ji Tianxing was seriously injured long ago. Yeah, we all saw with our own eyes that Ji Tianxing was covered in wounds and could only flee in a sorry state. Ji Tianxing can't even protect himself and was going to lose his life in an instant. How could he possibly insta-kill Captain Guang Wu in one move? If Ji Tianxing really has such ability, why didn't he use it earlier and was even forced to flee in panic? Captain Chiyu, could it be that you're deliberately finding an excuse to cover up your dereliction of duty? Captain Chiyu's face immediately turned as black as the bottom of a pot, and he shouted angrily, Bullshit! This seat wishes to tear him into pieces. How could I possibly fail in my duty? Just as everyone was making a ruckus, and you rushed over on the battleship. He walked out of the battleship and came to the crowd with a cold expression, his gaze staring fixedly at Captain Chiyu. Chiyu, where's Ji Tianxing? Captain Chiyu did not dare to hide anything and recounted what happened just now from the beginning. And you immediately frowned and shouted angrily with a cold expression, Bastard! What's the use of having you bunch of trash? Ji Tianxing was already beaten to serious injuries, his strength dropping drastically. But you guys still let him escape. If we can't eliminate the weeds at the roots today, he'll definitely take revenge crazily in the future and bring us huge trouble. Chiyu, this seat will report this matter to the general and hold you accountable for not doing your job well. After dropping these 2 sentences, and you flicked his sleeves angrily and turned around and flew back into the battleship. The cook duck flew away. He was both furious and unwilling. Following that, he led the fleet and sped high in the sky, searching everywhere for traces of Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. However, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had already escaped far away. Even if you and the others split up and searched a radius of 100,000 miles, they could not find any clues. After 6 hours, the plan to encircle and kill Ji Tianxing had failed, and Yu had completely given up. He could only bring the fleet back to reclaim the various cities and sects in the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. If he wanted to take over the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains for himself, it would not be as simple as destroying the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. It would take a long time. At the very least, he would have to destroy the 9 sects and 18 factions first before taking over the many cities. After taking control of those cities, they would be able to plunder the resources and treasures of the various cities and enslave hundreds of millions of people. After this battle, the Heaven Punisher's territory increased exponentially, more than doubling in size. Chapter 2389. South of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. About 300,000 miles away, there was a 1,000-mile-long canyon called the Valley of Heroic Souls. Even though it was noon and the sun was shining brightly in the sky, the canyon was still dark, cold, and quiet. The deep and serene canyon was filled with millstone stones and shrubs, which were covered by thick clouds and mist. At this moment, a few purple-robed human warriors were standing on a large green rock and looking at the sky outside the canyon. These purple-robed elders were the elders of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. The leader was wearing an apricot yellow Taoist robe. He was the Huanglong Taoist. He stroked his beard with his left hand and held a golden horsetail whisk with his right hand. His expression was as calm as water, but there was a hint of anxiety in his eyes. The elders were anxious and could not help but ask, "Great Immortal, when will the martial ancestor meet us?" "Great Immortal, it has been half a day since the teleportation formation sent us here. If the alien fleet follows the vine to find the melon, it is inevitable that they will find us here." It was obvious that the mysterious teleportation formation under the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains was set up by Ji Tianxing. When the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains collapsed, all the disciples entered the teleportation formation and were teleported to the Valley of Heroic Souls that was 300,000 miles away. It was because of that teleportation formation that the Huanglong Taoists, the elders, deacons, and disciples were able to keep their lives. However, it had been half a day since they arrived at the Valley of Heroic Souls, but Ji Tianxing had not appeared. The worry and anxiety in their hearts deepened as time passed, tormenting their nerves. The Huanglong Taoist raised his hand and signaled for everyone to quiet down. He looked up at the sky and said calmly, "Master is a deity who can see the future and foresee the future. He has already predicted that the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains would face a calamity today. Therefore, Master has already set up a great divine teleportation formation underground to connect to the Valley of Heroic Souls. This place is 300,000 miles away from the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. Even a martial god will not be able to find us quickly. Don't worry, we will be safe for 3 to 5 days. The most important thing now is to comfort the disciples and heal their injuries as soon as possible." A purple-robed elder asked, "Great Immortal, the disciples are healing their injuries. Their condition has already stabilized. Grandmaster hasn't appeared for a long time, nor has he passed down any orders. Could it be that we're going to keep waiting here?" The other elders also had the same question and nodded in agreement. Huanglong Taoist shook his head gently and said solemnly, "Master is only treating this place as our temporary shelter. How can he let us stay here forever? Don't worry, I've already sent a message to Master. I believe that it won't be long before Master gives us a clear answer and instructions." Hearing his words, the elders felt much more at ease. That's good. As long as Grandmaster doesn't give up on us, we still have a chance to rise again. Where there's life, there's hope. As long as we work hard, we'll be able to take revenge sooner or later. Grandmaster is a deity. He was once a godly king who could move unhindered through the galaxy. What do we have to fear? In a few more decades, when Martial Ancestor recovers his deity realm, he will be able to avenge himself and kill all the damned Heaven Punishers. Everyone discussed with righteous indignation. Their hearts were filled with anticipation and fighting spirit. Right at this moment, A streak of reddish-golden light flew over from the horizon. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, the huge streak of golden light arrived above the canyon. Huanglong Taoist and the other elders were alarmed and immediately put up their guard. When they saw that there was a glazed fire dragon in the streak of golden light, they let down their guard. Soon, the glazed fire dragon was put away. A young man and a young woman whose robes were stained with blood landed in the canyon and came before Huanglong and the other elders. When they saw the two of them, Huanglong and the other elders were excited and moved. They quickly bowed to greet them. Greetings, Master and Mistress. Greetings, Grandmaster. They were Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. Ji Tianxing was relieved when he saw that Huanglong and the other elders were not injured. He nodded slightly and said, "Everyone, please rise." He looked at Huanglong Taoist with a dignified expression and asked, "When I returned to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, the mountain had already collapsed into ruins. Did everything go smoothly? Have all the disciples been safely transferred?" Huanglong Taoist quickly cupped his hands and bowed. He answered respectfully, "Master, I followed your instructions and detonated the Sky Dome Array, the Heaven Spirit Array, and the Earth Killing Array. Not only did we destroy the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, but we also injured many of the Heaven Punishers. Even you and a few other martial God Realm captains were severely injured. As for the disciples, they have all safely entered the teleportation formation and were transferred here. Also, our sect's treasure vault and cultivation resources were organized 3 days ago. They were all brought out." He paused and smiled. "To put it simply, all the people and treasures have been transferred out. We did not leave a single hair for the Heaven Punishers." Ji Tianxing looked gratified. He nodded and said, "Yes, you did well. This is the only way to minimize the losses. Where are the disciples? Are they hiding in the underground cave?" Huanglong Taoist answered, "Yes, they're all seriously injured." Chapter 2390. In the first level of the Jiuqian Shuluo Tower, it was a vast and dark space. In the middle was a square with a radius of 10 miles. It was surrounded by rows of houses and buildings. When Ji Tianxing first came here, there were statues of the Yin-Yang saints in the square. There were 2 dead pine trees in the corner of the square. There were jade tables and stools under the trees. There were thousands of houses and palaces that could accommodate 100,000 people. However, there was no one. In the end, Ji Tianxing found a mountain of bones in the main hall. It was in a mountain of bones that he found a pearl. It was formed by the divine consciousness of the common people. Of course, this was a few years ago. Now that Ji Tianxing had returned to this place, he wanted to settle the disciples of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains into this space. He stood above the black square. His eyes passed through the darkness and scanned the surrounding houses and buildings. Although many of the houses and palaces were dilapidated, it was not a problem. The craftsmen of the Earth Spirit Tribe and the disciples of the Tianju Mountain would be able to repair them quickly. Ji Tianxing released his divine consciousness and covered the entire space. He checked carefully. After confirming that this space was absolutely safe, he opened the world in the sword and let the people of the Tianju Mountain out. Swoosh! Swoosh! The Huanglong Taoist, the elders, and the deacons were the first to arrive at the square. Everyone was startled for a moment. After using their divine sense to observe the surrounding situation, they all revealed looks of surprise and curiosity. "Hey, where is this? This space is dark, but there are many ancient buildings. Could it be a ruin? The spiritual chi of heaven and earth here is abundant. If it's safe enough, it's the best place to live in seclusion." Everyone looked around curiously and whispered to each other. After 100 breaths, thousands of disciples also arrived at the square. Everyone was seriously injured and dispirited. However, they were still orderly and not a mess. Ji Tianxing raised his hand and signaled for everyone to quiet down. He said in a dignified tone, "This space is the first level of an ancient divine pagoda. The divine pagoda is hidden in a secret realm. Even a martial god can't find it. It's absolutely safe for everyone to live in seclusion here. From today onwards, the members of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains would temporarily reside here. I hope that everyone can work hard and do their best to improve their strength. One day, we will rebuild the Pillar of Heaven's Mountain and annihilate the Heaven Punishers to take our revenge. A deep and vigorous voice spread throughout the entire square, reverberating in the dark space. Thousands of disciples were infected by Ji Tianxing's words. Their blood surged, and their hearts were filled with hope. Ji Tianxing pointed at the buildings in the darkness and said, "There are thousands of houses and palaces here, more than enough for everyone to live in. Although many of the houses are dilapidated, I will send people to repair them." In a moment, Huanglong and the other elders will arrange accommodations for the disciples so that they can heal their injuries as soon as possible. Huanglong Taoist and several elders hurriedly bowed and said, "Yes, sir." Ji Tianxing finished his instructions and turned to leave. At this moment, Huanglong Taoist caught up with him and transmitted his voice to him. "Master, I have something to report to you." Ji Tianxing stopped and turned his head to look at him, asking, "What is it?" Huanglong replied respectfully, "Master, although we have emptied the treasury of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains before we left, we have also gathered all the resources and brought all of them here. However, I have roughly estimated that the cultivation resources are only enough for our sect to use for about 8 years. 8 years? Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and thought to himself, "I don't need 8 years, almost 2 years. I will definitely be able to recover to the divine realm. Perhaps I will have a way to annihilate the Heaven Punishers by then, and I won't have to worry about this anymore." However, he still had to give Huanglong an explanation to stabilize the morale of the disciples. 8 years is still a long time. I will think of a way to find or plunder more resources. You only need to command and educate the disciples. I will take care of the cultivation resources. Huanglong Taoist heaved a sigh of relief and nodded. "I understand." Then he took out a fist-sized silver-white crystal from his wide sleeve. "Master, I have followed your instructions and taken away the origin of the Star Divine Furnace. Black Dragon, Qianyu, and the Star Crystal Core are still in the origin crystal and are unharmed." Ji Tianxing took the silver-white crystal and saw that there were indeed 2 tiny specks of light inside. They were Black Dragon and Qianyu. In addition, there was also a walnut-sized Star Crystal Core. This fist-sized origin crystal had already shrunk by several 100,000 times and was extremely condensed. Ji Tianxing would only be able to restore it to its original state after he had finished setting up the array and was fully prepared. He took the origin crystal core and gave some instructions to Huanglong Taoist before he turned and left. A moment later, Ji Tianxing returned to the 5th floor of the Divine Pagoda. He stood on the demon god altar and looked at the 18 demon god statues around him. This altar is the core of the Divine Pagoda and has been set up with the origin divine array. Although the altar has powerful divine power, it is not suitable for nurturing the origin crystal core. He muttered to himself and then looked up at the dome of the hall. There was a huge star diagram on the dome, showing the boundless starry sky. He knew very well that the tens of thousands of specks of starlight were formed from real stars. This star diagram was actually a starry sky with a radius of 1 billion miles. Only a god king could condense it billions of times and store it in this divine pagoda. Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a smile as he sensed the endless star energy contained in the star diagram. With such a vast amount of star energy, it would be enough to condense a few thousand star furnaces. If I set up the array here, I can quickly restore the Star Divine Furnace. I can even refine the Star Crystal Core in the shortest time possible. After making up his mind, he flew to the center of the hall and took out 6 sage artifacts and hundreds of supreme-grade spirit stones to set up the array. The 6 sage artifacts were the core of the array, and the hundreds of spirit stones were the nodes. They were spread out in the hall. Ji Tianxing was fully focused on casting the array. He waved his hand and sent out tens of thousands of dermic power light beams to quickly set up the array. Time passed silently. Unknowingly, 10 days had passed. A heavenly cycle star array with a radius of 10,000 feet was finally set up. Although this array was not big and was only a simplified version, it was countless times more condensed. It was not a problem to use it to support the divine furnace's origin crystal. Ji Tianxing took out the fist-sized origin crystal of the divine furnace and placed it in the center of the array. Thus, the origin crystal core automatically absorbed the star energy of the array and expanded at a speed visible to the naked eye. 2 hours later, the origin crystal core had expanded to a diameter of 10,000 feet, filling up the entire array. The array's star energy was lacking, so it absorbed the energy from the star diagram. With the inexhaustible star power, the cauldron was also burning with star fire. Qian Yu and the Black Dragon, who were in a deep sleep, gradually woke up. Ji Tianxing used his divine sense to talk to the two of them for a while and explain the current situation. Then, he left with peace of mind and went to the 6th level of the Divine Pagoda. Chapter 2391. Ji Tianxing returned to the 6th level of the pagoda. The distorted space was as dark and cold as ever. He flew for tens of thousands of miles before he found Yun Yao beside Ji Ko. "Yao Yao, why aren't you recuperating?" he asked curiously as he stood beside Yun Yao. Yun Yao pointed at Ji Ku, who was cultivating, and said excitedly, "Aku's strength has broken through again. That's why there was such a strange phenomenon." Ji Tianxing stared at Ji Ku and realized that her strength had indeed increased by a lot. She had reached the level 3 martial sage realm. Furthermore, the golden flowing light around her body had become half gold and half red. She was even more mysterious and powerful. In a halo that resembled flowing water, the image of a slowly swimming firebird became clearer. The firebird was slender and beautiful. It had a crown on its head, and its tail feathers were extremely long. It looked like a peacock. Ji Tianxing was shocked and muttered, "The last time we came to see her, she was only a level 2 martial sage. Only 1 month has passed. She has cultivated here for 4 years and has advanced by another level. She is so talented that she is even more talented than us. That's incredible." Yin Yao nodded in agreement and said with a smile, "It seems that the demon god's inheritance that Aku obtained is also a supreme god's divine skill. The owner of this pagoda must be the demon god's divine king. Its power attribute is very similar to Aku's. That's why there is such an effect." Ji Tianxing thought for a while and pointed at the firebird on the light screen. He asked, "Do you think that the demon god's divine king is related to this firebird?" Yin Yao was stunned for a while. She nodded and said, "That's possible. When Aku obtained the demon god's inheritance, she said that she fell into a strange dream. In the dream, she not only saw a magnificent battle between gods, she also saw the fall of a divine bird that covered the sky. If we are not wrong, the divine bird that covered the sky is the owner of the pagoda, the demon god's divine king. This shadow is still a bit blurry. It looks like a peacock." Ji Tianxing rubbed his chin and said thoughtfully, "What kind of divine bird would that monster race god king be? Like a peacock?" Yin Yao frowned and said, "This range is a little too big. The blue swan, the divine eagle, the golden crow, the four-eyed bird, and the legendary Huanyu are all similar to this phantom." Ji Tianxing shook his head and said with a smile, "Forget it. Let's not talk about this for now. Ku will tell us the answer later." After saying that, he and Yun Yao turned around and left. The two of them found a place in the dark space and began to cultivate in seclusion. For the first half of the year, the two of them had been circulating their energy to heal their injuries. After their injuries had healed and their powers had returned to their peak, the two of them focused on cultivating and worked hard to break through to the rank 8 martial sage realm. Of course, the 8th level of the martial saint realm was only the beginning. Their final goal was to achieve the martial god realm as soon as possible. Only when Ji Tianxing reached the immortal state and perfected his sword Dao could he use a supreme divine power to fight against the Heaven Punishers. 10 days passed. News of the Pillar of Heaven's mountain's destruction had already spread throughout half of the Shenwu continent. The Heaven Punisher's name had once again shocked the various races, and they had become one of the most powerful forces in the continent. The related legends and news spread wildly throughout the continent, and everyone knew about them. In the eyes of the various races, the Heaven Punishers, who had come from the starry skies, were even more powerful and cruel than the ancient and mysterious demon race. At the same time, the Heaven Punishers had also become the fourth most powerful force, comparable to the three divine kingdoms. The various martial forces of the various races were watching from the sidelines. The Heaven Punishers were so ambitious that they kept on invading and expanding their territory. Who was their next target? Within the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. The Heaven Punishers had already occupied this area for 10 days. And you led many soldiers and built a majestic heaven-punishing palace on the ruins of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and arranged for it to be heavily guarded. He presided over the heaven-punishing palace and sent out many martial god realm captains to control the city lords of all the cities. The 9 sects and 18 clans had already been destroyed. The Heaven Punishers controlled many city lords and truly controlled this territory. In the past 10 days, and you and the experts of the Heaven Punishers had been very busy, and you wanted to completely take over the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Just controlling the city lords was not enough. He also sent out thousands of black-armored warriors to guard the various cities. This way, he would completely stop the people from resisting. The entire Pillar of Heaven's mountains was controlled by the Heaven Punishers. Hundreds of millions of people had become slaves for the Heaven Punishers. On this morning, and you sent out an order from the Heaven Punishing Palace to all the cities. Then, many Heaven Punishers ordered the city lords to gather hundreds of thousands of slaves in the cities. These slaves were mostly young and strong martial artists, regardless of gender or race. Not only did they need to excavate the mountain and obtain cultivation resources for the Heaven Punishers, but they also needed to build fortifications and fortify walls. They also had to build city walls, forts, and fortifications. They also had to raise demon beasts and plant spirit herbs for the Heaven Punishers. In short, now that the Heaven Punishers controlled the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, they wanted to wantonly plunder the resources of this territory. In the past, when the Pillar of Heaven's mountains ruled this territory, they had never done such a thing. For the sake of a long-term plan, the amount of cultivation resources that each city could mine and use was limited. However, the Heaven Punishers were different. They did not think about long-term livelihoods and did not care about the lives of the people. As long as it was a resource that they could use, they would plunder it without caring about the consequences. Even if the Pillar of Heaven's mountains became a barren land a few years later, they would not regret it. At most, they would just invade other territories. After all, they were the plundering forces that wreaked havoc in the universe. Soon, chaos and killing erupted in the various cities because of the slave recruitment. Any normal person would not be willing to lose their freedom and become a slave like an animal. However, since the Heaven Punishers had given the order, the city lords' residents could only carry it out. They used forceful methods to gather slaves. When the people in the cities saw the city lords' residents extend its evil claws to their own people, how could they not be angry and disappointed? The many people and martial artists naturally resisted with all their might and clashed with the city lords' residents. However, the resistance of the people was too weak. The Heaven Punishers stationed in the various cities used bloody and cruel methods to slaughter a group of people who resisted. The chaos was suppressed. Soon, the various cities had gathered 300 to 500,000 slaves and started to plunder resources. After a few days, the plundering plan was on the right track. The mountains and mines near the various cities were dug up by the slaves. Large amounts of ores were mined every day. After being refined, they were turned into spirit stones and sent to the city lord's residence. After accumulating a certain amount, the Heaven Punishers would send the spirit stones to the Heaven Punishers' palace and hand them over to Anu. In addition, the construction plans of the various cities were carried out in an orderly manner. Raising demonic beasts and planting spirit herbs was also carried out smoothly. In a short month, the Pillar of Heaven's mountains had completely become the Heaven Punishers' territory. No martial artist or faction dared to challenge the Heaven Punishers' rule anymore. Of course, everyone had a trace of hope and faith in their hearts. Chapter 2392. Unknowingly, 2 months had passed. News of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountain's destruction was still circulating in the continent, but its influence had weakened greatly. What made the various races slightly more at ease was that the Heaven Punisher had temporarily stopped their attacks. It was as if they were satisfied with conquering the 72 cities and the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. Over the past 2 months, the Heaven Punisher had been managing their territories and conserving their strength. An endless amount of cultivation resources poured into the Heaven Punisher's treasury to increase the strength of the Heaven Punisher warriors. The citizens of the 72 cities and the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains were in a miserable state, but they were powerless to resist and could only silently endure. Only some experts and large forces with foresight could see the Heaven Punisher's ambitions and plans. The cruel and greedy Heaven Punisher would definitely not be satisfied with the current situation. After a period of recuperation, they would definitely be able to gather even more strength and invade even more territories. Martial god Luo Shui was one of these foresight experts. Over the past 2 months, she had been at the upstanding water altar. After her injuries had healed, she had focused on researching the divine warships that they had seized. The owners of those divine warships had been killed by her. The divine warships had become ownerless objects that she could disassemble and research freely. As the saying went, only by knowing yourself and your enemy could you be victorious in every battle. Only by understanding the Heaven Punisher's warships could she find a way to deal with them. After a month of research, she had finally thoroughly researched the warships. The Heaven Punisher's warships were essentially flying divine tools. Most of the warships were low-grade divine tools. However, these warships were supported by the Heaven Punisher's array and were extremely suited for traversing the void. If she used the same method to deal with ordinary divine tools to deal with these warships, it would be difficult. Luo Shui pondered for a long time and decided to dig deeper into the secrets and find a shortcut to deal with the warships. She had originally thought that these warships would absorb the power of the stars to be able to fly in the void for a long time. However, she realized that she was wrong. The Heaven Punisher's array had nothing to do with the power of the stars. Instead, it used a special power. This power did not belong to the 5 elements, but truly existed in the world. It was just that the people of the Shenwu continent did not know how to use it. Luo Shui was unable to decipher the mystery of the array, so she sent a message to Ji Tianxing to inquire about the situation. 2 months had passed in the outside world, and Ji Tianxing had already cultivated for more than 8 years on the 6th level of the Divine Tower. His strength had successfully broken through to the rank 8 martial sage realm, and his martial arts foundation was firm and solid. He did not continue to break through to the 9th level martial sage realm, as he temporarily stopped cultivating. After leaving the 6th floor, he appeared on the 5th floor's demonic god altar. The heavenly cycle stellar array was not far away. The star divine furnace in the Great Formation had already been filled with the star fire, exuding a surging aura. Qian Yu and the Black Dragon were refining the star nucleus. The star nucleus had already turned silvery white, and the impurities were becoming fewer and fewer. Ji Tianxing estimated that it would take another 3 to 5 months at most for the star core to be completed. At that time, he would be able to collect some supplementary materials to upgrade the Burial of Heaven. Afterward, he activated the Origin Divine Formation and headed to the 1st level of the Divine Pagoda to check on the situation of the Heavenly Pillar Mountain disciples. The disciples of Pillar of Heaven's Mountains had already settled down. The dilapidated buildings had long since been repaired by Earth Spear craftsmen. Over 1,000 disciples had basically recovered from their injuries and were all cultivating diligently in their respective residences. Huang Long and the other elders would often guide the disciples in their cultivation when they were not cultivating. After checking on the disciples' conditions, Ji Tianxing opened the door of the Divine Pagoda. He found the Huanglong Taoist and instructed him, outside the Divine Pagoda is the legendary Yin Yang Secret Realm. It is a small world. Not only is it rich in spiritual qi and resources, but there are also many ferocious demonic beasts. Normally, The disciples do not have to cultivate in seclusion. You can also enter the secret realm to train. The Huanglong Taoist was overjoyed and nodded his head in agreement. Master, you're absolutely right. I also have the same idea, but I have not been able to realize it. Since the secret realm is outside the divine pagoda, that is great. Ji Tianxing did not say much. After giving a few more instructions, he left. He went to the 4th level of the divine pagoda and found the little blue Kuan and the white dragon in the boundless deity ocean. Under the white dragon's guidance, the little blue Kuan's strength had increased significantly. It had broken through to the martial sage realm, and its body had increased by a few times. The white dragon had also recovered well. Its spiritual soul had become more solid, and its strength was gradually recovering. When the white dragon saw Ji Tianxing, it was overjoyed and looked as if it had been relieved of a heavy burden. Seeing its reaction, Ji Tianxing opened his mouth to ask for the reason. The white dragon smiled bitterly and said, Master, although this deity ocean is the home of the little blue Kuan, it is vast and free. However, it is just the two of us here. After staying here for too long, I am tired of it. Moreover, if I cultivate here with it, my strength will recover too slowly. Now that I am ready to form my celestial body, I can't do it here. Ji Tianxing nodded his head and smiled. Since you have stayed here long enough, follow me. I will bring you to the 6th level of the divine pagoda. The flow of time there is 50 times faster than the outside world. Only by cultivating there can you quickly increase your strength and form your celestial body. Hearing this, the white dragon was excited and cheered. That's great. I thought that there were no artifacts in the mortal world that could accelerate time. Back then, when we were in the realm of the gods, we cultivated in seclusion for thousands of years. We relied on the time artifacts. Ji Tianxing nodded his head slightly and left the deity ocean with the white dragon and the blue Kuan. Soon, he returned to the 6th level. The white dragon was very familiar with the feeling of time and space being distorted. It did not feel uncomfortable at all. Instead, it was full of excitement and anticipation. Only the blue Kuan had not experienced it before. It looked timid and silently looked around. Ji Tianxing reminded the two of them, from now on, the two of you can cultivate here in peace. Don't waste time and don't disturb others. The white dragon was suddenly interested and asked curiously, Master, there are other people here? Of course. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, Your 2 mistresses are cultivating in seclusion here. Ah, 2 mistresses? The white dragon was shocked and subconsciously exclaimed, Master, you are finally enlightened? Ji Tianxing's face darkened and he frowned. The white dragon knew that it had said something wrong and smiled awkwardly. Cough, cough. I'm just a child. Please forgive me, Master. I will not dare to disturb your mistresses. I will go cultivate in seclusion now. After saying that, it pulled the confused blue Kuan and hid in a distance to cultivate. After sending the 2 of them away, Ji Tianxing left the divine pagoda and appeared on a barren mountain outside the secret realm. The divine pagoda could isolate the heavenly axioms senses and communication jade slips could not enter. He thought that 2 months had passed, and perhaps someone would send him a message. It turned out that he guessed right. As soon as he appeared on the peak of the barren mountain, a spiritual light descended from above his head. Swoosh! He reached out and grabbed the spiritual light. A communication jade slip appeared in his palm. Chapter 2393. Luo Shui first asked about Ji Tianxing's situation through the communication jade slip. It was widely rumored that the Pillar of Heaven's mountains had been destroyed and all the disciples had been killed. However, Luo Shui knew that Ji Tianxing had already made arrangements. How could he allow the Pillar of Heaven's mountains to fall to such a state? Then, she told Ji Tianxing about the recent situation of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. The Heaven Punisher army controlled many city lords and completely controlled the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. They recruited slaves from various cities and plundered cultivation resources. Hundreds of millions of people lived in misery. While they endured silently, they dreamed that the Kenshin would return soon and kill their enemies. Finally, Luo, Shui mentioned the Heaven Punisher battleships. She told Ji Tianxing the results of her research and asked what that special power was. After Ji Tianxing finished reading the information in the jade slip, he frowned. He thought for a moment before taking out the communication jade slip and replying to Luo Shui. Yun Yao, the disciples of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains, and I are living in seclusion in a mystic realm in the ruins of God. We are safe. You don't have to worry. Now, the Heaven Punisher army has taken over the 72 cities and the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. They have rested for 2 months. They will definitely launch an even bigger war. You and I both know that their next target is most likely the Luo Shui Divine Kingdom. You must be careful. As for the Heaven Punisher battleships, they're just ordinary divine battleships. There is nothing to study. As long as we use medial-grade divine artifacts, we can successfully destroy the battleships. As for the power used by the battleships, it is indeed very mysterious. It is a special power that the Heaven Punisher cultivates. It can be called force. Force really exists in heaven and earth, but only a few races can use it. Ji Tianxing used his divine will to record this message in the jade slip. After hesitating for a moment, he continued, Also, I am preparing to reforge the burial of Heaven's sword. I need some supplementary materials. Since you've already dismantled a few battleships, why don't you send me some parts? Those are good materials for refining divine artifacts. I have no time to go to the Luo Shui Divine Kingdom. Send someone to send the items to the north of the ruins of God and hide them at the foot of Cloud Returning Mountain. After adding a few more sentences, he sent out the communication jade slip. He stood at the peak of the mountain and waited quietly. A quarter of an hour later, Luo Shui sent him another message. The content of the message was very brief, only a few short sentences. The parts of the battleship are useless to me. I will send the inspector of the divine guards to deliver them to the place you specify. The Luo Shui divine nation's calamity was imminent, but it was unavoidable. They could only do their best and leave it to fate. I only hope that you and Yun Yao can enter seclusion in peace and recover your divine realm as soon as possible. Only then can we resolve this disaster. After Ji Tianxing finished reading, he silently put away the jade slip, turned around, and left. After returning to the Divine Pagoda, he appeared in the 5th level. Luo Shui would soon send someone to deliver the materials. What he needed to do now was to complete the refinement of the star core as soon as possible. Inside the Star Divine Furnace, Qin Yu and Hei Long seemed to be tireless, constantly refining star cores day and night. The star crystal core was still thousands of meters wide, and it was silver-white in color. The impurities were already very scarce, and the surface of the crystal core was also diamond-shaped, constantly refracting a dazzling brilliance. Shua! Ji Tianxing stepped into the array and entered the Star Divine Furnace. He personally used a secret technique to control the star fire to speed up the refinement of the star core. Qin Yu and Hei Long sensed his aura, and they were both excited and worked even harder. Time passed silently. Unknowingly, a month had passed. The impurities of the star crystal core were completely removed, and it was condensed to a diameter of 800 meters. It was crystal clear, as transparent as glass. It contained a vast, boundless, and extremely rich star energy. Obviously, the refinement of the star crystal core was successful. Originally, Ji Tianxing estimated that it would take at least 3 to 5 months to complete the refinement. But when he did it personally, the time was greatly reduced, and it only took a month to complete the refinement. Of course, a large part of the reason was due to the star map on the dome of the hall. That was the real starry sky, and it could provide endless star energy, increasing the power of the Star Divine Furnace by several times. Shua! Ji Tianxing finished his spell and stepped out of the Star Divine Furnace. He stared at the star core and the star fire and muttered to himself. The star core has been successfully refined, and the materials sent by Luo Shui's men should have arrived by now. Burial of Heaven, you will soon be able to recover your divine artifact form. With that, he stepped onto the demonic god altar and left the Origin Divine Pagoda through the Origin Divine Formation. In a flash of light, he appeared on a barren mountain outside the secret realm. It was late at night, and the sky was as black as ink. Cold winds howled across the mountain peak. Ji Tianxing looked around, but he didn't find anything out of the ordinary, nor did he receive any communication jade slips. Thus, he silently flew through the night sky, heading for Mount Gathering Cloud, which was thousands of miles away. At the foot of Mount Gathering Cloud, he released his divine sense to envelop the entire mountain. Soon, he discovered that there was a cave in the belly of the mountain that had been excavated by someone. He entered the pitch-black cave and found a package amidst the rubble. There was a jade box in the package. It was sealed by an array and didn't emit any energy fluctuations. However, Ji Tianxing saw the symbol on the jade box and knew that it was what he needed. He put away the jade box, took out the small golden pagoda, and immediately returned to the 5th floor of the Origin Divine Pagoda. Sitting on the demonic god altar, he opened the seal on the jade box. When he opened the jade box, he saw that there were 2 layers inside. There were 6 pitch-black metal strips. These mysterious metal strips were the components of a battleship. They were engraved with array patterns and contained a mysterious power. Ji Tianxing checked and confirmed that there were no problems. He then took out the pure and flawless star core from the Star Divine Furnace. He took the star core and the jade box and prepared to enter the 6th floor of the Origin Divine Pagoda to upgrade the Sword of Burial of Heaven. To restore the Sword of Burial of Heaven to a divine artifact, not only did he need a lot of materials, he also needed a lot of time. It would take at least 3 to 5 years, and at most 100 years. As such, he could only do it on the 6th floor. Qinyu and Black Dragon also stopped cultivating and woke up. Swish! Swish! Both of them flew out of the Star Divine Furnace and came to Ji Tianxing. They asked excitedly, "Old Ji, the star core has been successfully refined. Are you going to upgrade the Sword of Burial of Heaven now?" "Old Ji, we've worked hard for 2 years and finally completed the mission. Aren't you going to reward us?" Ji Tianxing looked at both of them and found that their strength had greatly increased. He couldn't help but smile with relief. Restoring the Sword of Burial of Heaven to a divine artifact is imperative. We can't waste any time. As for your reward, follow me to a place. I guarantee that you'll benefit greatly. Qinyu and Black Dragon were instantly excited. They looked very expectant. "Where are we going? Is it a treasure vault?"